president, the United States will once again stand shoulder to shoulder with the state of Israel. I will support Israel's right to win its war on terror, and we will win fast. You have to win, and you have to win fast. When I'm president, we will deport the foreign jihad sympathizers and Hamas supporters from our midst. We don't want them in our midst. And I will work with you to make sure that Israel is with us for thousands of years. We're not going to let go of it. I will ban refugee settlements from terror-infested areas like the Gaza Strip, and I will put every single college president on notice. The American taxpayer will not subsidize the creation of terrorist sympathizers on American soil.
No president has defended Israel and Jewish Americans more than President Donald J. Trump. He declared Jerusalem the undivided, eternal capital of Israel and moved our embassy there.
On December 6, 2017, at my direction, the United States finally and officially recognized Jerusalem as the true capital of Israel. Today, we follow through on this recognition and open our embassy in the historic and sacred land of Jerusalem.
Trump imposed crippling economic sanctions on Iran, aimed to curb their nuclear ambitions. And President Donald Trump brokered the Abraham Accords, reshaping relations between Israel and much of the Arab world. Donald Trump will crack down and take decisive action against anti-Semitism on the streets and college campuses, restoring safety and security for Jewish Americans.
To every college president, I say remove the encampments immediately, vanquish the radicals, and take back our campuses for all of the normal students who want a safe place from which to learn.
Donald Trump stands as the most pro-Israel president in U.S. history. Someone the Jewish community can count on.
When I'm back in the White House, the United States will stand with Israel all the way, 100%, without hesitation, without qualification, and without any apology. We're not going to be apologizing.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Friday, July 18th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. A lot of what has been discussed over the last so many years, and most in particular, right before the selection process, has undeniably come to pass. And that's just an important thing to really take a moment to think about, because a lot of the political back and forth can be a lot about, theorizing, predictions, discussing what you think may happen, and rarely do these things happen like to a T on usually somewhat in a certain vein of the conversation. Usually somewhere in the middle. That's kind of the thing people come to see if they begin to see through the partisan idea, which is that, both sides are usually giving you kind of a caricature of the reality for their own benefit, where it's probably somewhere in the middle. But the point is to think about a lot of the things we've been discussing. And when I say that, I mean like the genuine independent media, not partisan. I mean, there's partisan overlaps, but not blindly team sport politics minded people that are willing to consider objective truth over their personal interest. The point is that a lot of this was being discussed. And I mean, whether Donald Trump was influenced by a certain party, whether outside party, whether, the technocracy would really show its face in this administration, whether that's been the long-term plan, the AI overlap, the genetic modification, gene therapy discussion. It's hard to see. Here's what's actually funny to me. And this is, those of you that watch this show, that this is not a partisan comment. I see both sides as equally concerning, equally cartoonish. And I mean that, and I don't mean the peoples around them. I mean the team sport politics, the Republicans and the Democrats. But if you look at what they keep saying, and then the lackeys, the sycophants that kind of circle around that, and you know who we're talking about, I don't see that as even even close to the majority right now of conservatives. But you know the ones at the top of that paradigm that are, anything, I know them. They're my friends. We're part of the same team. People that are reporters that are more like fans. They're the ones that are saying, promises made, promises kept, and going down this. And I stand back and I look at this objectively. And you look at the information about what's happening, and I'm going, what actually has happened that meets these promises? I mean, even the immigration point. It's becoming a ridiculous. I mean, look, and to be clear again, the Democrats do the same thing. But right now, we're at a very interesting tipping point, a dangerous moment for this country, which both sides have led us to measure by measure for a long time. But really take a step back and recognize how many of the things that are happening are what a lot of people were worried were going to happen and now are in fact coming to pass. And we're in an interesting overlap with Epstein conversation exploding into the partisan field, the Israel, both these things are fracturing, I think, largely the partisan conversation, not just one side of the paradigm. And it is changing everything. And in these moments, bad things can happen for the interest of trying to drive you back into that sort of propagandized, numb state that a lot of people can end up in if they're not paying attention. But also, very good things can happen. We can see a massive shift in awareness. People can start taking different actions. We can start seeing beyond the petty and partisan division tactics that make you pit yourself against your neighbor, your family, your loved ones. And if we can start leaning into that mindset and start constantly telling ourselves that we can, it's what we go back to in the very beginning of this platform, myself and what I talk about, be better. Every single day, try to just be a little bit better than yesterday. And then if you really live that, and not just in a way that, it's not winning, it's about being a better person and being better in what you want to be in this world. And I think that if most people are I think most people want good for this country. And if we aim in that direction without considering the partisan narratives, I think we'll end up in a positive place. I think right now we have a large opportunity to see that change take place. And so today what we're going to discuss is how these things kind of work together and the positive elements as we go through this. But don't misunderstand. There's a lot of bad things happening, a lot of darkness in the world. It's always there. The problem is that right now, because of the way things have, there's a lot of factors to include. These bad, evil elements are, I think, in like a death throes kind of moment. Not like the entirety of evil in the world, but like the ones we're highlighting are diminishing, are being seen, are being called out, are losing influence and power. And as always, the cornered animal analogy, what we're seeing is more violence, more chaos, more of them doing anything they can to either stop the awareness or bring everyone down with them as they go down. And that's going to happen. The point is not to be swayed by the outrageous narratives and the scare tactics about maybe we shouldn't release the Epstein list because that'll bring down the government. Good. Bring it down. Now, you can take that as 1,000 different ways you want. You know what I mean if you watch this show. And I mean probably what you think in a lot of ways, but the reality being that is a positive thing. Even with all the negative that might come along with it, we have to get beyond these broken structures. Now, today, though, again, we will be talking about the Epstein overlap, Donald Trump, Israel, Gaza, and an important conversation about Syria and the Druze population. Some of these things I mentioned here and there with Charlie Robinson's interview, as well as Brad Miller, we just discussed in studio yesterday. That went out yesterday. But it's a very important development that shows you pretty much most of what we talk about today, the bigger picture, when you look at it from that angle and understand how it connects to the bigger points. But a lot of important things we're going to start with as well. Actually, I'm going to start with the Epstein point, but a lot of things we're going to start with outside of what I'm going to try to quickly go through around health as well. Somebody actually left me a message today about a gene therapy report that I found that we're going to talk about briefly. But overall, just the negative direction of the Maha, not the movement, but the government element that wants you to think that they support you, that are pretending to be Maha, the ones that are lying to you and continuing to go in the wrong directions. We're going to go over all of that and the different points that are standing out that are showing you that they are lying to you. But like I said, outside of all that, we're going to start with Epstein today, but not from a point because to make this clear, Epstein's, the story of what that is, the list, the sexual blackmail, the trafficking network, the obvious and undeniable connections to intelligence, clearly Mossad and Israel and how that's used, as well as the CIA. It's obviously a monumental story, but if it's new to you, it's kind of alarming for those of us that have been, it's been a mainstream story and it has been fleshed out from Whitney's books and different investigatory. People have broken this down. Now, that doesn't mean everything's covered, but to understand what this really is has been very clear for a long time. The story is important for reasons that people are barely even beginning to understand, for the larger picture, eugenics and transhumanism and technocracy, but also just what it is. But my point is the story as it stands right now in the partisan field is basically unimportant. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because right now, this game that's going on, we're going to do a grand jury, or we're going to hire to appoint a prosecutor. Oh, wait, never mind. Now we're not going to do that. Now Bond is going to put stuff out. One day it's a hoax. The next day it's a nothing burger, right? No smoking gun. How can you say that there's a hoax and then at the same time tell us that now we're going to give it to you, but there's nothing important? Those two things don't add up. So this is Hasbara. That's why I frame it that way today. That is exactly the way Israel conducts propaganda. I think it stems from a belief that you can lie 17 different ways and the establishment will cover up for you. But that's what we see every day in Israel propaganda. Lie, lie, lie. Okay. And finally we'll accept that last version of the lie. That's what he's doing right now. My point is the dance and, the dog and pony show of about what they're going to do around Epstein has kind of eclipsed everything else going on. So I'm going to rapidly go through some of the updates on what I think are important in that framing, but hopefully do it in 2 minutes. Because the reality is this is less important than the Epstein story itself, what it's really connected to, and every other thing we're going to talk about. And you'll see what I mean when we go through that. So let's start with this update. Actually, sorry, I'm right in the middle. This point about this is about the Israel Mossad director today visiting Washington, D.C., to seek U.S. help in convincing countries to accept hundreds of Palestinians. As if that's not an alarming thing to say in the first place, that we're going to ethnically cleanse and force these people out of their homes. And then we're going to act like we're doing humanitarian work by petitioning people to help them. Okay, that's insane in its own right. And we'll talk about that when we get to Gaza. Or the idea that you're talking about bringing in immigrants. Isn't that exactly what, just none of this makes any sense. Again, we're talking about Mossad asking the government, not that the Trump administration is going to do it, but we'll see how that goes. It wouldn't surprise me with the Afrikaners and so on. My point is it's probably also a little bit better Epstein too. Probably the Mossad director coming in the middle of the scandal might not look the best for them. I just thought that was interesting. I'm willing to bet you that's absolutely what that's about. Damage control. And I think you know what I mean. If you don't, pay attention. We'll go through some of this stuff today. But I wanted to point this out too. I thought this was interesting. We put this out on March 2nd, and it wasn't because what we now know we knew then, but we already saw where this was going, and this was about what was happening then, based on the fact that they were trying to downplay, push to the side. But the interesting thing is that's exactly what ended up happening. The title was "The Deep Doge State: Epstein List Got Twitter Filed, and Israel Breaks Ceasefire as Planned." Yeah, and you'll be forgiven for not knowing where that last one falls in, seeing as how they break ceasefires every 15 seconds. Epstein List got Twitter filed in March. It's an interesting thing to write, seeing as how that's where we are, at least for now. Maybe tomorrow it'll all break through. We should always consider that possibility. But I just thought that was interesting. Now, Adam Cochran covers this. He's the one I believe I saw share this the first time, but this is another follow-up from Wired. Metadata from the raw Epstein prison shows approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds were removed from those clips that were stitched together. This is just, I don't know how you can't see this. There's either one or two things that I can see in all this. Incompetence, like a shocking level of, what's worse than incompetence? Like, these people, I don't know how they tie their shoes in the morning if this is what they're doing. Secondarily, or alternatively, that this is what Israel wants to happen, or somebody else, because they want this country to completely collapse. I don't understand this. I could wrap my mind around a world in which, as I think Bruce Fine pointed out, that we've from administration to administration. And I think that's because of Zionism, quite frankly, but regardless, whatever's causing it, for administration to administration, we've watched them get worse and worse. And the people that care and the people that have insightful, who have technical knowledge, who understand politics, just go, I don't want anything to do with that clown show. And they stop going in. Now, in a way, I hate politics in general, but if it has to exist, then we should want people that care and know what they're talking about. And we should be able to sift through all that. The point is that we've seen that go the other direction. So maybe they are this stupid. Maybe they are this incompetent and someone else is taking advantage of that. And maybe both are happening. But my God, as I simply said, this is the video the Trump admin reviewed and released and took a long time to do it. There's no hiding from this. There is no pretending they did not know this, or otherwise, if you are, then that means they're insanely incompetent. And that is alarming in its own right because of what I think is happening. Now, man who served in the same jail cell as Epstein says there's no way he was able to kill himself. Well, you heard that from anybody with know-how, anybody that did investigation, anyone who read about the prison, because that's how those prison cells are designed. But what's interesting is that it's just coming back up. It would have been impossible unless somebody gave him something to do it with, allowed him to do it himself, did it to him, or took him somewhere else and pretended it happened. I mean, these are things we should genuinely be considering, and we were when this was first being covered. That's why this is not a shocking story for a lot of us. But this is a new one from today. Donald Trump's ex-chief of staff has now said that he is, in fact, in the prison in the Epstein files. It was Mick Mulvaney. Now, yes, as always, the closest people in his team seem to later be the biggest enemy, and now we can't trust him. He's a rhino. Well, at one point, he was in the team, so it's worth considering what he's saying. But that could all be part of a ploy. I think, if you want my honest opinion, just my opinion, I think it's obvious that he's involved in this. I think it's obvious he, like all the rest of them, which aren't unique to their partisan side, are either taken advantage of by this outside entity or are just that disgusting and they're in these lists because they are. It's not about one side or the other. I think these people are all in these positions for a certain reason. Now, I will play this. This is, I think I forgot to grab this. This is a clip. Show you this since we're on this page, make it quick. This is a clip that you've already seen, most likely, of Donald Trump just reiterating that this is a hoax. And I'm going to read something after that to make this quick. And I really want to make this minutes. So let me go through this as quickly as possible. Here is what she's saying, or Donald Trump is saying next to Caroline Leavitt about it being a hoax. Now, remember, right before this, the point was that this was, where was that? Oh, there it is. I got it right here. That this is, at first it was something that wasn't there. Then it became something that was, at least, and then you had the people in the middle saying, is the deep state tricking him? Are they blackmailing him? That was Jones from day to day. One day he's being blackmailed, but the tape that's missing in a minute. The next day, Trump's using it to blackmail the deep state. Then it became, it's a hoax. Now it became that, I guess, Jones seems to think that he's working for Mossad or he's considering that. It's just so funny to me to watch the evolution of that. Good. I hope he wakes up to all of it, even though I don't think he's honest. I don't think it's a wake up in process. I think he's trying to play you into something else. But, maybe I'm wrong. Consider it. The crazy part, though, I was going to talk about it at the end. Hold on. I jumped ahead. Is that you evolved to this, to saying it's a hoax, and now what we're going to go to next is what Trump is telling you, which now challenges that statement. This is the Hasbara point I'm making. But in case you missed it, he was calling this a hoax.
The Attorney General briefed you on the DOJ and FBI's review, the findings of that review. The Attorney General briefed you on that.
On the
DOJ and FBI review.
On what subject?
On Epstein, of the review of the files. Attorney General Pam Bondi briefed
very,
you on that.
very quick briefing.
Did she tell you, what did she tell you about the review? And specifically, did she tell you her name appeared in the file?
No, she's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden we went through years of that with the.
And of course, Russia hoax, right? Which was, and we all know that. Literally everybody everywhere with a brain knows they made that up. So now they're just trying to pull this back in and say, look, the Democrats lie about everything. Guess what? They both lie. Every side lies about everything. That's what they do. We're finally starting to see that right now. But so think about how insane that is to argue that this is fake. After everything you've been saying, how can it be fake if you've been if Bondi to Trump, actually, I'll just read what he said right here. First, it's this one here, I think. Yeah, what 5 Times August wrote was really good. It really just make it seem as dumb as it really is. But Glenn says, what is in the Epstein documents that's causing Trump now to insist over and over that they're forged and fake documents fabricated by Comey, Obama, Hillary, and Biden? And they even got fact-checked on here. The first federal investigation into Epstein was launched, he goes on to talk about it, and closed under George W. Bush. A new federal investigation was launched in 2019 under Trump after Epstein was arrested on sex trafficking charges afterward. Epstein died, they claim, in August 2019 prior to Biden. So the point, clearly, is that he's trying to continue to tell you it's a hoax after telling you that more was going to be coming out. And I said the only people now pushing this, and it was Jones and Johnson and the rest of them until they shifted again, are blind followers or opportunists. Remember who they are. Also be skeptical of those who suddenly see the light when it's been obvious for a long time. Hope they have changed, right? Hope they've changed. Give them that opportunity, but question it the same until they prove out over a long period of time. That's my point right now. With a Tucker or a Jones, sure, I genuinely want that to happen. As much as people will still probably do, he's not. Yes, I want that. Why wouldn't I? I think I've proved over the years that it's about the outcome and the truth for me over anything else. But why would we take it now after, realize what, even with Trump, he just lied to you blatantly about 6 times in a row about this story. Now, let's say tomorrow they break out with all the files. Why, even if it's the truth, wouldn't you go, well, hold on, you just tried to deceive us really clearly and then gave us the truth. Either way, you're dishonest. That you have to be real about that. So Trump calls Epstein hoax a conspiracy a hoax. His own words, by the way, in another discussion, and turns on MAGA. Now, this was the in-between part. This is from the 16th. It's the 18th today. 2 days ago, Trump called MAGA people, Republicans, conservatives, who were simply going, I care about the Epstein files. You know why? Because Trump told them to. Or because they do. But my point is, Trump was the one that made this a point, and he calls them weaklings. Literally. Trump lashed out at his own supporters, calling them gullible weaklings for questioning the transparency of the secret government inquiry into the Jeffrey Epstein point. Now, again, we're going to come to the point of what they're doing with Bondi right now. Why in the world, after what they just did in front of you, would you then trust what Bondi and Trump roll out for you? Especially as they're seemingly trying to control this in that way. Let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. See how lazy that is? Blind sycophant followers will go, oh, Democrats do it, then the opposite good. That's their mindset. And or just don't care. And whatever Trump says, I support because I'm a follower. Insane. He can insult his base. And some of them, and the high up followers don't care. But as most of us paying attention can see, it is beginning to deteriorate because of things like that. Elon Musk pokes holes in Trump's hoax claim about the Epstein files, saying, wow, amazing that Epstein killed himself and Ghislaine is in federal prison for a hoax. It doesn't make any sense, guys. It doesn't make any sense. DOJ, of course, urging the Supreme Court to turn away from Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal, which, remember, this is an interesting development. Here's what I read on this. Donald Trump clumsily puts out the idea it's a hoax because I think they're reactive and they're not really they're not thinking this through. But saying it's a hoax then opens the door for Ghislaine Maxwell to say, well, if it's a hoax, then why am I in jail for trafficking? See, and so now her lawyers are going, bing, we're jumping on this, and they are, and they're pushing for an appeal. The DOJ is going, no, we're not, but it may happen. Or there's a behind-the-scenes conversation that gets her out of jail, and then nothing comes out anyway, right? That's what I see is happening. Or maybe this is being thrown at him because of some Zionist thing. But obviously, this is not what we're being told. It is shockingly obvious. Trump floats appointing a special prosecutor to put Epstein hoax to bed forever because of his duped supporters. And then almost within less than 24 hours, we're not going to do that. Trump won't appoint a prosecutor. White House DOJ did exhaustive and thorough review, right? So they throw the bone because they go, see, all day, all the supporters were going, we knew it, prosecutor. GC Drano said, boom, there it is. It's all going to change. Then not even 24 hours later, they go, never mind. We already did an exhaustive, thorough review. Who didn't see that coming? Our job was already done well, so shut up. Well, you've been lying about the whole thing, and we all know you're lying now, so why would anybody follow this? Here he is. And here we go, as Trump says, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Epstein. Ridiculous amount of publicity? This is just insulting to anybody with a brain. He says, I have Pam Bondi. I'll have her produce all pertinent information to grand jury testimony subject to court approval. There's so many holes in that and so many easy ways for them to maneuver around this the same way they are now. It's one more process. Even just like from Congress, where they're going to discuss this as we'll do an investigation and we'll go through it all. When does that ever benefit America, guys? Very few times, but there have been times have I seen that come to where we have new information and people go to jail. For crying out loud, Clinton those 2 guys from Boston they destroyed their pay-to-play dynamic. They nailed it down to the wall with documents and proof. Did Clinton go to jail? No. And that was when they wanted her. They were going, put her up. It's just so clear that the government on both sides doesn't really care when it comes down to their job, their paycheck, and whoever influences them. But here we go. DC Drano will jump to the next thing they say. But here is a member of Congress, Representative Paulina Luna. Thank you, Bondi. While others are busy trying to knife the president or just, care about the truth, this was quietly in the works behind the scenes. Oh, was it? Are we really going to pretend that this was always happening and he only just now told you as a reactive point to shut you up about calling it out, but somehow they were always going to do this, but they didn't tell you in the beginning when it would have saved him all this strife? These people are bad at lying, guys. She goes, I can say with full confidence, this is the most transparent administration in history, says one of the AIPAC-funded liars. Now the real question, will any reporters finally cover the FBI destruction of Epstein evidence under the Biden administration. You mean the thing that nobody has evidence for, that you guys all just scream and hope that people like One American News Network and others just go, yeah, that's the fact, which is probably already happening? Or people like Jones and the rest just tell you that? Guess what they say? Enjoy phase 3. Phase 3? Wait, did we ever see phase 2? What happened to the phase 2 binders? I only saw a phase 1 binder, which, by the way, didn't change the story. And people like Drano and the rest pretended that, God, this is embarrassing. And microaggression, or rather Charlie Robinson says, phase 2, electric boogaloo. That's when you bend over as far as you can and stick your entire head up your ASS. Phase 3, she's saying. Here's what 5 Times August said. He goes, so we follow. Trump knew Epstein, but kicked him out of his club for his behavior, but he never went to the island, but he understands that very bad things went on there. And this is what he said, by the way. And in 2019, said that we need to find out if Bill went there to the island because it'll tell us a lot about the situation, because bad things are happening. But anyone who wants to keep the story going now is a bad person and a weakling because the story is actually made up, boring, and there's nothing there at all, even though Bondi said they received truckloads of files and there were over 250 victims. But that's Obama, Biden, and Clinton and Comey that made it all up. And it's actually a complete hoax. But now there's going to be an unsealed grand jury testimony, even though it's apparently all made up. Is that the story so far? Just so we're all on the same page. You see, guys, in my opinion right now, we are seeing the divide of the people that have a brain, honesty at all, and those that are revealing themselves to be complete dishonest manipulators. And by the way, and again, I hope I'm wrong. I know people will tell me I'm wrong. That's why I think Jones and the rest are starting to go, oh, he works for Mossad. Trump is messing this whole thing up. And they're actually, meanwhile, constantly and subtly keeping the train going while telling you there's probably reasons you should support him and why he'll keep the good things going and he's going to save America, but maybe he's the Antichrist. I don't know. It's ridiculous. But I'll have hope like anytime I want to see the good things happen, but my God. Now, clearly we got over the time I wanted, but that's how we do this, I guess. I can't not bring thoughts up when they come to mind. Trump suggests there's no smoking gun in the files. That is 4 hours ago. So it's gone from hoax to, well, there's nothing important in there. Well, but it was a hoax. Then what? This is how it keeps going. Donald Trump. If there was a smoking gun on Epstein, why didn't the Dems who control the files for years put it out? Okay, why didn't you do it, Trump, in your last administration? Same point. But here's the real point, and the only reason that actually makes sense, but it's my opinion, because they're all guilty. Because they're all on the list, or because they're all working together. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to make that make sense, but Trump is putting this out on the 18th today because that's what they keep screaming. Posobiec and the rest, they all keep doing it. It's the same thing. He came out again yesterday and said, if the Trump was in the files, why didn't they release it? You go look at their accounts. They've said this almost every day for the last week. Like it's some new thought. No, they're just propagandizing you with an idea that you can easily break down. Read the comments. Because they're all on the list, because they're all working together. People aren't buying it anymore. But he wants you to think that. Comey, they lied because they had nothing. But then why was it important that Clinton was there? See how dumb this is? But of course, Paulina Luna goes, yay! Whatever, that, bullhorn, what he said. Benny Johnson, bullseye! On this dumb thought that everyone should laugh at because it's obviously not a sound theory. And then this points out some of the people trying to gaslight. Here's Tim Pool going, first, you saw this one. He goes, absolutely insane that Democrats actually voted to have the U.S. government publish child porn. What the F is going on anymore? And of course, even Facebook says, or Twitter, representing the vote as publishing child porn is intentionally misleading because that's what they do. That's their job. But of course, before that, in February, he said, Pam Bondi just said the Epstein list is on her desk. Release the list and expose the criminals. Okay, by that logic, you just called for child porn, right? But they're dishonest, partisan manipulators. This is you calling him out. Here, Tim Pool says absolutely. Oh, that's the same one. Oh, that's right. I found the other one from that. And then David Icke says, Sally Agris calls out Jones, saying Alex Jones believes Trump's being controlled by Mossad blackmail. Wow. So brave of you to finally come to that logical point, even though I will argue just like as much as I would report that as my opinion because I can't prove definitively that's happening. See, that's honest reporting. But I've shown you the evidence for the last 15 years, or probably less than that, but for a long period of time. Others have been doing it much, much longer than that, and we've had on the show, talking about the reality of all of this, of Epstein, of these U.S. government connection to Zionism, Mossad infiltration, right? But now, because his base is the one saying, for the last week, you look like a moron. How are you defending this? So they subtly pull into it. But while, mark my words, still pulling punches for Trump everywhere they can. David Icke says this is so obvious and has been for years and years that you wonder how it took him so long to see this blatant. But that's the point. I think he's always seen it. He goes, my sources say you need people to tell you when it has been staring you in the face all this time. But Trump doesn't need much encouragement to do whatever Israel wants. He's been owned by an ultra-Zionist much of his life. I agree with that. And it's not him he's covering for people. He's covering for himself and others' benefit. How desperate the MAGA media are to get back on board with Trump. Much of their audience is still not having it. Then you've got this person I've never seen before. I just happened to see this today. Almost 100,000 followers. You can watch the video. It's 9 minutes. It says Trump didn't betray his base, because that's what obviously is going on. He called its bluff. Wait, so you mean the MAGA base is now the responsible party? They were the ones he called their bluff? I don't think this is going to age well. And it says these people don't want justice. They want content. So now you're attacking your own base? I mean, think about how wild this is. This shows you something important, I think. She's saying the MAGA people that got them there, Trump in that position, if you want to believe the narrative anyway, but that's the momentum anyway, that they don't want justice. They're the only ones at this point calling for justice. And it says they'd rather have something to be angry about than something that actually works. I don't even know where you're going with that at this point. The reality is, this is obvious to me. What's going on is and it's not just Trump, it's the U.S. government betraying its people. She goes, so let's talk about the noisy former supporters, the pitchforks, and this is the panicans. I mean, if you're going to win the day for the dumbest effort, panicans, that's not even a good term. I think it's like panic Americans, I guess, that Trump put out that he's forcing into the conversation that only real blind followers are using because it's dumb. I think somebody called it a boomer term. It's a stupid term. It doesn't even make much sense. It's not even a clever, what do you call it? A juxtaposition. It's not. But people are out in force trying hard. Here's Paulina Luna again saying phase 3, which I had over there. I just kind of threw this together. Sorry. Phase 3. This was the point about the picture of them just presenting themselves as, well, this seems to be suddenly like a new presentation. Now they're the ones on the team and we're fine. My point is this. Actually, well, I'll show you after sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'm trying to do this quick. She said, why hasn't a single media outlet asked me to discuss my investigation into the Epstein file destruction? Because there's not evidence. Everyone knows this. You guys are screaming a narrative just like you do with the auto pen, and certainly possible. I wouldn't even deny that's possible because obviously Biden was senile, but there's no evidence to back up that anybody else did it. If you have it, show it to me. I'll talk about it. The point is the same here. I thought it was funny. This person says, Grok, was Luna directly involved involved at DOJ or FBI to be a witness for the media? And she says no, or Grok says no, was not directly involved. She has no insight. These people, and this is what I want. This is the real point that I'm trying to make with her. She put this out saying, please don't show this to Wall Street Journal. It's a hand sketch. They may think I'm a sex trafficker because you probably saw this going out. This is what I really think is happening right now. Trump seems to surround himself with the dumbest people in the room. More accurately, the only ones left who are either too stupid or too corrupt to realize how obvious all this is. I mean, think about how clear this is to even his base right now. And you get people like Luna that flock to be by his side because anybody with a brain's going, I'm going to distance myself right now. That's how I feel it anyway. Censored News says more from Luna, the newly appointed head of the task force on declassification of federal secrets. Here she is going, Hamas savages are beheading babies. Here she is saying, I'm sick to my stomach because I just heard of a report where a baby is put in an oven. Lies, all lies with no evidence to back them up, but she still says them. Here she is, BB in the house. You starting to get it? The APAC funded Luna. Here's the team. Here she is right here. APAC tracker or track APAC. I mean, these people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars from APAC. This is an Epstein a Wall Street Journal article that came out. Jeffrey Epstein's friends sent him body letters for a 50th birthday album. One of them was Donald Trump. He disputes it. Does it surprise anybody? He's now suing Wall Street Journal. They claim they can back it up. Well, I guess we'll find out. We know they know each other. There's a picture right there. They've met each other. You see them laughing on film. There's plenty of overlap. The fact that he sent him a body letter, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But they're going to push back, which I think shows weakness. Mario Narfall says, Randy Fine moves to cancel the House subscription to the Wall Street Journal after the Epstein story. Gee, Randy Fine, that doesn't line up at all. I mean, my God, these people, the Wall Street Journal puts out an article about the problem that they want you not to think about, and he goes this far. Guys, you're showing weakness. You're showing desperation. And to end this, Trump's name was a red flag for FBI and review Epstein files ordered by Pam Bondi, top Democrat reveals. So I'm sure team sport Republicans will flatly disregard it without any investigation, which you should question it, but engage with it. Senate Democrats are asking in a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi about the FBI review of Epstein files, specifically why it took an additional 3 months to release a memorandum on the findings and why agents were instructed, which it does appear to be the case, to flag any mention of Donald Trump. I mean, you obviously could answer just politics. Even if he's not involved, he knows it'll be used against him, so it would make sense. But it says Trump has instructed Bondi to release pertinent files on the criminal investigation to Epstein. So what if they don't feel that his mention is pertinent? It's so easy to see how this goes. And it's left and right. It's your government. This is how they operate. Subject to court approval, which is obviously another issue they can play, Bondi said the Justice Department is, quote, ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Does anybody actually think this is going to shift? I certainly hope it does. I mean, and just to be clear, if this came out tomorrow and the evidence spectacularly, it just proved that Trump's right about everything, I'd happily report that. Just no point has anything been stated that we can't. The reality is the evidence isn't there. What we have is pretty clear. He's been lying, regardless of whether it turns out that he's not involved. He's been lying. The question is why. My point is, we should want the truth, whatever it shows. You know as well as I that people on both sides of this paradigm don't think that way. The reality, though, is I don't think we're going to get anything else, or it's going to be a same, here's phase one. Is that everything? You guys done? Have we put you back to bed? Can we move on? No, we didn't buy it. Oh, now there's another story. That's what I think it'll be. Sadly, they've shown you that. But it says a bombshell report by the Wall Street Journal reveals Trump's name along with a body message and doodle among an album of letters celebrating Epstein's birthday. That's what that doodle is about. I think it was like a body drawing of a girl, I guess. And it says Trump has denied that the drawing or letter was his doing and announced he plans to sue them. And that's where we are. I thought this was just interesting. I'm seeing this from people in this kind of partisan field. I get that they don't see themselves that way. Clint Russell says, I don't know how to do it without infuriating Trump beyond belief. But if J.D. Vance has any hope of 2028, he's going to need to distance himself from the Epstein debacle. And no, I don't mean campaigning on justice in 2028. I mean, you need to tell the truth now while it's needed. Why are we even talking about J.D. Vance as a future candidate? Doesn't feel very libertarian of me or anybody to be talking about another statist president, quite frankly, but on top of the idea that isn't the whole point about Palantir and the infiltration of that conversation and J.D. Vance being sort of a mentor? It's just weird to me that this is, I guess, the larger point. People that profess to be outside of the paradigm, to see through the two-party illusion many times in the past, on an interview with me, talking about the idea that we need to make sure J.D. Vance, it just feels wrong to me. And I think a lot of people, honest or not, have been pulled back into this for a litany of reasons. We should be smarter than this, and we need to stop being pulled into this idea. Now, let's get into what I think is the real important stuff today. Took way too long to do that, unfortunately, but we got plenty to get to. So I want to start on this, bring up the screen share for you, with a conversation about my past interviews and some AI overlap that I think is important. So I had a great interview with Brad Miller. We brought this up on the interview, actually. I feel like he's right. I feel like we've had 3 interviews. I could only find 2 for some reason. It's certainly possible that I didn't tag it properly, but then should still pop up with Brad Miller. Anyway, he also thought we had 2 before this, but I included 3 before this. There were 2 that I had on the show. This is supposed to either our 3rd or our 4th. Brad Miller interview, military accountability and the greater Israel war and the technocracy transition. It was a really great conversation. We spent a really good period of time in the beginning talking about the two-party illusion, the military declaration of accountability that there was a lot of hope that Trump's new administration would do, or positively change the reality of this country and the military, and they don't think that. There's a lot of multifaceted opinions, but collectively, the argument is right now, the things they were worried about, the things they were calling out in that does not seem to be changing. In fact, it continues to seem to get worse. And people that see through the two-party illusion recognize that's always how it seems to go, because it's about one thing, the U.S. government not caring about U.S. interests or American interests. But it's a great discussion, and I highly recommend you check it out. But we go on to talk about one part that I thought was very relevant that I just wanted to make sure that you didn't miss, which was about not the whole conversation. If you want the main conversation, I do think this will come to play, and I think this is going to be an important conversation going forward. Simply for the podcast, weather manipulation for AI. And that's not really the main point is water usage in these AI data centers and how in the world they think they can get beyond that choke point. It seems to be shockingly unsustainable. So the question is there an effort for more, because it already is happening, weather modification for AI to cause rain, and all of a sudden we're having record rainfall and floods all over the country? It is worth your consideration. It's hard to deny, but that's just the conversation I had about this on July 7th. Now, I also included this. We talked about this. That's why I'm bringing it up with Brad, and I just pointed it out. Or I think this one was with Charlie, actually. We went to the town Elon Musk is poisoning. This was, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm conflating the two interviews. Brad, I discussed in the beginning. The ones I just mentioned about the AI point was actually with this interview with Charlie Robinson. And we do this periodically, try to do it every month, simply what the hell is happening, kind of get caught up in all the madness. And we talk about this point in this interview. And I'm not going to play this, but it's worth watching. What the town, I believe it's in Texas. It is in Texas. We went to the town Elon Musk is poisoning, and it talks about how there's, water issues and all sorts of things. It's happening all over the place. There's a New York Times article about a woman next to Meta's data center that all sorts of health issues, their water's coming out brown. This is happening all over the country, in the world, really. And so it's worth understanding what it's doing to your community as they, intensively ramp this up. So my point is just to make sure you're not missing that stuff. Check it out. We talk about it in this interview with Charlie. We also talk about the fact that if you missed this, the alarming reality that Israel is now associated with the United States in a strategic partnership for all things artificial intelligence. And that terrifies me. The idea that now Israel has, as he writes right here, don't forget, they just signed a policy to consolidate all of the data on all Americans. And now Israel will have access to all of this. And I argue they largely already have. But this is a bigger problem. So with everything AI we're talking about, just recognize that Israel has a hand in it right now. Even just the fact that they're openly committing genocide in multiple nations, which is I'm calling the Greater Israel Genocide, is enough to have a concern about this. Or that they're war criminals. But there's so much more to get to with the espionage, the blackmail. That's what this really comes down to. And I said, this is what we have been warning about long before this partnership, right in front of your eyes with a barely passable narrative. Now, Business Insider also reported the Pentagon is about to start using XAI. AI, it is the same. That is the large, I think that's the primary AI at this point. Their AI's Grok and other federal agencies. So now you're getting this XAI overlap that's going to be used throughout the military field, and that's overlap with Israel. Doesn't that concern anybody? This is one of the most alarming points for me with the Israel infiltration because of what's going on, and doesn't seem to be getting a lot of reach. Of course, don't forget that X is XAI at this point. So not just the military, but all of, it's like the data is already there, but just recognize all of the social media aspect as well. It's a much bigger thing that's happening. Now, Elon Musk spent months slashing federal contracts, Fortune reports, but now his AI company is celebrating a $200 million Pentagon contract and a new unit to get government business. Right, so the guy that was going to be saving us all this money, right? Do we not realize by now the whole Doge tap dance was a clear deception? It was obvious while it was happening, if we haven't caught up to that by now. I think at this point, Doge, or rather whatever agenda was happening, they got what they wanted from the illusion. They got your information. Americans were blinded by what was happening, and they allowed, or whether we could stop them or not, we, by compliance, allowed them to remove the siloed information, jam it all together, get access to it to train their AI models. XAI and OpenAI and Palantir, everybody else, they're now using that to kill people in Israel, in Gaza. And they got it, and now he's done. Now, I'm sure there's probably much more, but think about how clear that is. He just steps away, pulls himself out of this, and now they're sprinting forward with the AI direction, building AI data centers. I think that's really what this was about. And now, not only is he getting $200 million for the contract, it's clearly not about saving money, but he is sprinting in this direction. What happened to everything else? What happened to the Doge mission? What happened? Yeah, I guess we'll just forget about that and move on. Don't you know it was all a big hoax? That's what I expect tomorrow. Hillsboro woman conned out of $15,000 after AI clones daughter's voice. It's just an insight into where the world is going. And there is in no way an effort to protect you from where this is going. I want that to be, I think that's by design. I worry about this stuff. Deep fakes, the whole thing. In fact, I forgot about that. Damn, I feel like I'm not going to try to find it. I don't even know where to go with this right now, but there was another big deep fake that came out. If you remember what that was in the chat, let me know. I pulled it aside and think I misplaced it. I think it was an important one. But that's all I can remember right now. It's just this fuzzy memory of like a couple days ago, there being a deep fake of somebody that was important. But it's the same thing. I just want to make sure we see that is, I still think that a larger shoe is going to drop, and whatever that means and how it's going to be used and when that big one comes. Maybe it's going to be an Epstein thing. That's what Well, we're kind of getting there right now. But the video they put out, they got caught lying about it, guys. They manipulated that video. At the very least, stitched pieces together. But how do we know they didn't just alter other things? Now, on the AI point, this is Noah Harari. And I think it's important to understand where the world is going in this direction. Now, a couple quick points on this, then we're going to get into we're going to then get into some health points. Then we're going to talk about the United States citizenship and finish on U.S. foreign policy. But this is important, just quickly to understand. There's another Oracle video I'm going to play as well that just really lays this out on where, and again, this is not the conspiratorial version. This is what they have written down in their documents. It's about what they want to build. Of course, they frame it as for your safety, right? For your convenience. But those things are just the way you frame it. It's about control. And if you think that control is helpful and convenient, then you're on board. But if you recognize that control is just control that can be used in any different way, then hopefully you recognize that it's about who uses it, the intention behind who's using it. And I think that's the biggest issue. Here you go.
Should AIs have the ability to open a bank account and manage a bank account? That's a very practical question. We are very close to the point when you can tell an AI, go out there, make money. Your goal is to make $1 billion. And one of the things about money,
I think that's already happening with people that have the ability to do it and the legal avenues to not have any repercussions for it. I'm willing to bet you the people at the highest levels have been doing that for a while.
it's a very easy goal to define. An AI can make money in many ways. It can hire its services to people to write their essays or books or whatever, many things it can do.
Which we know is happening. And I'm willing to bet you that there are far more prominent people than you realize that have been passing that off as their own work. Bet you anything.
It can earn money. It can then invest this money in the stock exchange. So do we as a society want to allow AI agents to open bank accounts and manage them in any way they see fit? And then this is not a question for 50 years. This is a question for 5 years, maybe 1 year.
And that's what's scary. It's now, guys. It's happening. So it's not some distant future, right? This is what they're building you into. So here is David Icke talking about Jason Bassler, David Icke commenting about the CBDC, the Genius Bill. Jason Bassler says, I don't care how convenient they claim it is or how many times they say it'll modernize, the financial system. Once they control, and that's a perfect example, right, of using a problem to justify the build back better, right, the reimagining. And they go, well, because we all agree the system's broken, but they leave it that way. They use that problem to then go, here, we'll fix it with this. And most people may not recognize that was always what they wanted. He says, once they control programmable money, they control your speech, your movement, your life. It isn't innovation, it's a digital cage. And this is where we all see it going. All right, the idea, really the best way to frame this is that whether it is a stable coin version of a CBDC or a CBDC exactly as we've discussed it, and realize the stablecoin version is far worse, as we've discussed with Catherine Austin Fitts and plenty of others well knowledgeable of the topic of what these can do, that's the far worse reality. The point, though, is that they need this aspect of it to create what he just described. What Harari was just describing, this has to happen first. And it could very well be simultaneous, but realize, and what I was saying before, the reason I described it that way is because right now, without this kind of overlap, there's all sorts of kind of boundaries and legal realities that I think would make it illegal to do with like an AI bot out there, like running some kind of job or selling things. But I bet you, my point is, I bet you people are doing it that have power to circumvent those things. But once we get to this point, I don't see how this doesn't explode. And I think that's what we're worried about. David Icke said Trump couldn't call programmable money a central bank digital currency because his base would have been furious. So he calls it stable coins. Now, it's not the best way to frame that because I think stable coins are very different and they do exist, but that's what he's pointing to and claiming it's just a stable coin when what they're doing is not just a stable coin, but which is the point he's making. But I just think it could have been written in a way that the average person might understand better. But the reality is exactly where we've always, David Icke's been calling, all of us have. And he says, anyone tired of winning yet? Thomas Massey says they blocked consideration of his amendment to the Clarity Act, which would have prohibited central bank digital currencies as well. So they're making sure that they aren't restricted from a government standpoint. Marjorie Taylor Greene was pointing the same thing out. The House is voting on the Genius Act, which has passed. Here's Nick's order. Breaking! The House has officially passed the Genius Act, a crypto bill backed by Donald Trump and Scott Bessent, two flaming Zionists. All it needs now is President Trump's signature. Yay! Yay for whatever Trump just told us to cheer for. 3 cheers for the current thing. I mean, come on, guys. Nick Sorter was calling out this thing with CBDCs before. This is the same point as always. These people will cheer for their own. I mean, you could make it as extreme, as dark as you want. It's like whatever they just said, yay, is what we keep seeing. And it is insane, but you know why it happens. Now, here's a clip I played. I think it was with Charlie Robinson, but I want to make sure you see this. It's only a minute and a half. But the geofencing part is what I think is really, and all of it's important, but the geofencing part of it is what I think will come as they build out the infrastructure. And the idea is being able to just, you pass in through this invisible barrier, your credit cards turn off, or rather, whatever, your digital currency doesn't work. Your everything, it's the idea of being debanked or depersoned. That's what that becomes. And this is where the world is going. And unless we do something about it.
In the long term, the plan is to pretty much lock up humanity in smart cities, which is kind of a superset of a 15-minute city. They've sold all the state and local governments and countries that smart cities are about sustainability and the good of the city.
So here's what's actually funny to me. So you can't call it 15-minute cities because that would upset the base in the Republican side. Because my point is they're doing the same thing. Build back better, big, beautiful bill. It's the same. It's technocracy. It's the same agenda. He even went and spoke at Davos, for crying out loud. Guys, they're on the same path. But you got to do something different, right? Different names, stablecoins, CBDC, right? But what's funny is smart city, which is what you're seeing a lot used right now, is almost just as bad, especially because he just described it as, it would be seen as, woke and Democrat from the side of people that only see it that way. My point is, it's happening either way, and the Trump administration is the one behind it. Or you overlap the point with freedom cities, the technocracy, the Prospera in Honduras, and what they're doing in El Salvador, not the immigration part, but what they're doing with the country. These are models for where this is going.
But in reality, the language from the UN and WEF and their white papers is all inverted. So, air monitoring is really about limiting mobility and no car ownership, right? Surveillance, control via LED grid is why the smart lighting is there. Water management is about water rationing. Noise pollution is about speech surveillance. Traffic monitoring is about limiting mobility. And then, of course, energy conservation is all about rationing heat, electricity, and gasoline. Another concept one should be familiar with is called geofencing. And think of it as an invisible fence around you where you cannot go beyond a certain point. And that will be related to your face recognition, digital identity, and access control.
Now, here's a way to overlap this, because you might be having a person out there thinking, well, Trump will never do that. That's only the Democrat. Okay. Well, let's say for sake of conversation, we start talking about, an immigration issue. What if they start claiming that Iran sent in a bunch of sleeper cells or any number of things? We had a surge through the southern border. And so now we need to find them. Whatever the rationale becomes, that we need this, not for you, it's not for Americans. It'll only be strictly applied to this. And let's understand, Palantir right now is using facial recognition of the entire country to seek out what they claim they're looking for as immigrants. That's a public reality. The only way they can use that to look is looking at everybody. Been going on for a long time, well before that statement. So the point is that you can recognize a reality in which this narrative becomes used because of whatever the current Republican agenda is. Again, it's just the narrative. The government wants it regardless. So you have to realize that this is happening. What they're building out will be applied. And it may not happen in this exact form. It may come in a different way. But my point is, there's literature. You can look at what they've been discussing from the U.S. government, from the international field. This is building out. And the players we're pointing to that are testing things on Gazans right now are the ones involved in this, in part at least.
Your smart contracts, SoftBrick can turn off your digital currency beyond a certain point from your house. Our world has been turned into a digital panopticon. That means you can be monitored, analyzed, managed, and monetized.
Right. And of course, you can see that last image he showed, right? And I just think it's interesting to think about, what causes that ability, what allows that, right? And the obvious point is, in one major part, what they've been building out. Not just the satellites, not just Starlink, but the satellite network, the spy network, as they call it. As again, the NRO said, you can't hide. We now have eyes everywhere, he said in a meeting. That's the National Reconnaissance Office. The point was, as he said in the interview, that Elon Musk is helping us do this, Elon Musk and SpaceX, but they're using the AI to make this all work. So back to that point, the reality is that has been built around you. You're already in essentially the geofenced world. How long until they just start parsing out the areas? This is not conspiracy theory, guys. It's very real. I just hope people can recognize that. I hope it doesn't happen the way that we worry that it will. Now, some health discussion I think is very important. Beef Initiative put this out. Breaking, Congress moves to grant vaccine-like immunity to pesticide grants, which is the reality. I looked this up in the actual appropriations bill, which you links down here. Section 453 would shut down EPA reviews and shield Monsanto Bayer from 67,000 cancer lawsuits. Like David Icke said, we tired of winning yet? Maha, right? How is this possible? I mean, I don't even know. I'm tired of even saying that. Every single day we see another step in the wrong direction, and every single day the people who want to ignore it continue to. But it's less every day. And every day they stand out like sore thumbs, the people that are not honest and don't care about the outcome. Beef Initiative you should support. We've discussed his work on AM Wake Up in the past. This is interesting. Somebody reached out and by the way, I told you guys I have it turned down because my phone in the office because I don't want, or in the studio because I don't want it to bother anything. But I didn't think I would get I've got like 13 messages that I hadn't realized were there. I apologize for those that might have left messages that I haven't gotten back to. I plan on doing that as ASAP. But I just caught it while I was in here, blinking, and I heard somebody reference this post. Just on a side note, though, sorry if I can get back to you out there. Sarepta shares plunge 40%, this is today, as future of its gene therapy appears at risk. Just the simple reality of this, gene therapy, right? This is the everything, whether gene therapy realizes specifically in the context of health, if you want to call it that, but genetically modified foods, organisms in general, it's in the same sort of wheelhouse. And the point is, this is for, genetic gene editing and things they claim will be beneficial for you, which it's up for you to decide. But that's the mRNA shot as well. That's what it is, despite what their narratives are. But just in a broader sense, the gene therapy direction has been it's a major part of where this goes. So they've reported that 3 patients have died related to those gene therapies. You realize gene therapy that has been allowed, this isn't an experiment. This has been allowed. This is an FDA will request the company voluntarily stop shipments. Great job, FDA. Sure, glad you made sure this wasn't. And this, I'm not claiming this is about RFK or Ma. This happened before that, if I remember correctly. The point is that this direction, the way our government, the way our FDA and HHS operate, they're not there to protect you. The fact that this can even happen, and the fact that it is the Wild West for what they want to accomplish, in my opinion, at the very least. And what the person pointed out is that people are dying to something that they allowed to go out, in my opinion, because this is the direction. Just like the mRNA shots. I don't know why in the world we're even allowing this to continue to happen, but one of the many. Good thing and good. Their stock dropped. Let's see if they actually care to stop putting it out. Just like in the past, that rarely actually happens. Or they'll ban something all around the world and the U.S. government will keep selling it to you for 50 years. Now, the overlap to AI, which is important. Josh Walko says, OpenAI says it's supercharging biodefense research. Weirdly enough, XAI, before it got updated, was claiming that XAI had a contract with Pfizer. And somebody asked it point blank and said, well, what about you set up here? And they go, oops, that was a moment where we had misinformation. It's like, maybe, or maybe that was the truth and somebody made you cover it up. I mean, we've already seen that happen. But you can decide. I obviously think there's overlaps to all of this. I think we've already proven that whether it's his company or not, that this AI direction, FDA even pointed this out, that AI medicine, that's what they're doing. Rather, AI drugs, mRNA and the rest, that's what they're doing. That's very public. But this is concerning, whether it's OpenAI, XAI, or anything else. It says, we've activated our strongest safeguards for ChatGPT agent. It's the first model we've classified as highly capable in biology and chemistry. This is safety research at OpenAI. Here's what it says on OpenAI's post. We've decided to treat this launch as highly capable, that's what they were just reading, in the biological chemical domain as under our preparedness framework, and activated the associated safeguards. This is a precautionary approach, and we detail our safeguards in the system card. Here it is. Preparedness framework. Look at what it says right here. Their framework is OpenAI's approach to tracking and preparing for frontier capabilities that create new risks of severe harm. We currently focus this work on 3 areas in frontier capability: biological and chemical capabilities that, in addition to unlocking discoveries and cures, can also reduce barriers to creating and using biological chemical weapons. The idea that they're even intertwining these ideas, the idea of an open AI having any overlap to this is just insane to me. And as he says, supercharging biodefense is probably the last thing we want anybody in this country actually wants. But nonetheless, the point is, whether it's gene therapy, genetically modified anything, this stuff is sprinting forward because they don't ask you. They do their best to convince you that what they're doing is what we want, and they point to the group that says that, but they don't care what we want in this country. We should be aware of that by now, or anywhere for that matter. Governments aren't on your side, but this is where it's going, and Trump and the rest are all about it. And on top of that, if you want proof of that, here's Donald Trump sharing on his own Truth Social this post. Today's announcement will lower drug prices. That's Albert Bourla. He posted this out July 17th. It says today's announcement from the White House about Pfizer will lower drug prices and provide important medicines directly to Americans. Yay. I mean, yeah, in a general sense, the idea is a positive thing for people that need those things. I hope you can maybe take a step back and reflect on whether you need pharmaceuticals. But Albert Bourla from Pfizer, whether you agree with that's worrisome or not, his base would. What did they say before this? He was supposed to go to jail. That was what they told. That's what the narrative was. And here he is working hand in hand with Trump. Thank you, Trump, for your leadership and delivering on your promises. Well, isn't that what you're supposed to say? Now, what's funny, by the way, if you search for this, I like pointing this out to you guys, it doesn't come up. Under top, latest, anything. Here's one from 2019. Today's announcement reflects that's not what we're talking about. Isn't that weird? Now, I'm telling you guys, that's not some kind of a glitch. That's just a search engine. The idea that certain things, like Trump mentioning how the CIA needs to get involved, still never pops up when you search for it. There's certain things, whether algorithmic keywords or not, that are just not supposed to, that at the very least, they diminish their reach. I'm willing to bet you it happens to work like ours, that you search for our work and it just doesn't pop up. It's the same point, but just recognize that you search for this as often as you want, doesn't pop up. I think that's important. Oh, by the way, here's Trump introducing the great Albert Bourla and getting booed by his own people. So he's very well aware that you don't like them. That's weird. I honestly don't know how I go through this stuff like very slowly, making sure I don't miss them, and I still somehow miss these videos every now and again. Here we go. And this wasn't that long ago, right? I just think it's important. Just like when he mentions the COVID vaccines and people go, boo. It just doesn't seem to matter, which I think is relevant to consider why.
Pfizer here, so I want to thank him. One of the great people, the head of Pfizer here.
Sorry, it's very low. He just says the head of Pfizer here, one of the great people, he says.
Head of Pfizer here, so I want to thank him. One of the great people, one of the great businessmen. Thank you, Albert.
Wow.
Thank you.
And all they do is go, oh, he did it so he could be booed. Certainly possible, I guess. But that's what's called an assumption, a self-serving assumption. And based on the fact that he still supports the mRNA shots that Bourla was a part of, it pretty clearly he wasn't just doing it to get booed. He's a part of it. But you can lie to yourself all you want if you want to ignore it, but just recognize that he is still a part of this problem, guys. Very interesting, I think, that he would post this on his own account, even though he knows what you think, even though he knows you don't want him working with this group. But yay, we're working together to lower vaccine prices because that's what we all want, right? Well, I think it's important to highlight the fact that, let me be clear about this. I think it's a rapidly shrinking minority of people that still fall for the stupidity of things. This kind of lowest common denominator, jingoistic, idiocracy level propaganda. But there are people that I think just eat it up, like a cat turd person, for example, or Benny Johnson. My point, though, is that I think right now most people are just tired of this kind of, and it's not about not being pro-America. There's a whole conversation to be had about what that even means and where we are in the world, but that's not what I'm even saying. There's plenty of people that still very much support this country who recognize how dumb this is. So let me play this really quickly. This is the White House. The White House account put this out.
Make it right, I make it right. Make it rain on them, I make it right. I make it right, I make it rain on them, I make it right. I make it, I make it right, I make it right. Make it rain on them, I make it right. I make it right, I make it rain on them, I make it right. I make it.
I mean, that has to be like the dumb. I mean, that is the dumbest thing. It's just basic. It's like you're dealing with a kindergartner in regard to what they see you as. Here's a bunch of American eagles flying out of the White House and money everywhere. What does it even mean? They just simply said, point of view, you just stepped into day 179 of the Trump golden age. Okay. Is that even what anybody, I mean, if you could argue that maybe in the middle or a year into or 2 years in, that maybe he'll get to some point where you think there's success. His own base does not think we're still pumping out mRNA shots. You're hiding the Epstein files. You've spent a hell of a lot more than the last I mean, what are we talking about? But just, eagles and money and rah, rah, rah. This is how stupid this is. And I simply said, you are a parody of yourself. I mean, guys, this is what it feels like. The absurdity of the movie that was supposed to be making, that's where every day it seems we're closer to idiocracy. Same point here. And I just said, America. That's what that feels like. It feels like something you would have seen on that South Park parody of Team America World Police. Doesn't it? Am I crazy? I just don't think most Americans are even falling for this anymore. And I know plenty of people disagree with me on that reality. I have a much higher opinion of the average person in this country. Now, lastly on this point, and then we're going to get into citizenship, which I think is really important for where this goes, especially with the Israel overlap that I think is shockingly clear to most people right now. I don't know if you saw this clip. I hadn't seen this before, but I don't think you need this clip to make it clear that there was something very bizarre that went down at Butler. I just had Brad Miller in the studio, and he is very adamant with the fact that he believes this was a complete hoax. Now, I was clear about this in the beginning, and I've been clear every time since. That it's obvious that something's going on here. The inconsistency of the reports, the shooting positions, how many people. Even the fact that the main part of the base and the Republican team just dropped this without any real conclusion. And at a time when half of them were saying Secret Service were involved, and then he went on to praise them all and say they're good. This was something weird. The only reason I wouldn't say it certainly could be a hoax. I'm not going to even ever deny that, obviously. But I don't think you can claim that as absolute. That was his opinion, is what he was clear about that. Is that a likely reality with what we're seeing going forward? I think it's very much so worth considering, especially with the idea of the ear and everything else. But don't take that as me telling you this is, I don't know that, because I'm not as irresponsible as plenty of the mainstream alternative media to make a claim that I can't back up with proof. Not just evidence, but proof. But the amount of things around this, even just, again, the ear point that we just showed you, you understand that there's no way around that. The lie about plastic surgery. It's the statements he made while he was there, what the doctors themselves said, the lies about the amount of blood. Everything has come together now to show you that they were making parts of this up. Now, that doesn't mean that proves it was what we're thinking. That's the point I always make in the past. It could very well be that there's some part of it that was, taken advantage of, or I don't know. Even as I say that, it's like, it doesn't add up when you think it through. My point, though, is that we don't know for sure. But this video adds a whole other element to this. And I think it's very much worth your time to consider whether or not this was genuinely something that was made up, that was planned and executed. I know it's difficult for some people to get past that, but what's interesting is the people that are right now the most resistant to just simply considering it is all I'm saying. Because I don't know, I can't prove that. But considering that are the ones that are usually far more willing to jump into that, whether there's evidence or not. And I think it's just an interesting mental block. But this was Sal the Agorist simply said, well, technically I think, and he just shared it because it was going around. I don't know. I can't verify it necessarily, but I did share it. It was a guy down here that was, right here. I'd seen him make the rounds, and he was basically, and it does appear he posted it first. He says, this account, Brick Suit. Yeah, it's a pretty big account, actually. And I think he said, right here, yeah, hey, Sal, how about tagging him? Because, which I think he did. Someone literally removed his watermark and used it. It's so gross the way the partisan field works today. That's how this goes. You get the large accounts that just kind of scrape off other people that don't have, this is a pretty large account itself, but they just share it and use it for themselves and get their reach. And it's just gross. People are disgusting today in the partisan field. But the point is the video. And I simply said, that is pretty interesting. I just want to make sure we give a credit to the person who it does appear shared it first. So what you're going to see is an angle from the stage where you can see as I'll just read what he wrote. Saying, moments after shots were fired, a member of Trump's team rushes to the side of the stage to gather photographers. That and then the flag part, I do think makes relevant points here.
President's been shot. Oh no. No. Either that or they're covering. We don't know. Either that or they're covering him. We love you. We love you, President Trump. We love you.
And there he is. So this guy, right as it happens, right here, you see him run off. No, I skipped it. It's right here. It's right at the beginning.
President's been shot.
Right there. It pauses.
President's been shot. Oh no. No.
It's right there. Right there. So you see that guy right there, right as it starts. This guy walking right here. Right as it happens. Now, my thought was clearly that, I mean, it's not impossible that petty people like this might have a standing order that if somebody shoots or even is shot, that go immediately get the photograph because that's important. I mean, that is a part of that does make sense. It's still really hard to believe that there would be that primed and ready with that, and there's so many points from the conversation of this. You can look at our website and check it out. Why they rushed toward the crowd, why the Secret Service violated everything they usually do, why there wasn't shots fired first, as they somehow wanted you to believe that they're not supposed to fire first, despite the next time it happened, they fired immediately, because that is the way it goes. Even Dan Bongino told you that yes, they're supposed, obviously, as far as I understand it, they don't even keep their safety on the Secret Service because it's about firing instantaneously. The point is it doesn't line up. Or the fact that the way he turned his head quite literally proved, as I can show you 100 times over, that from where they shot from, including even where they claim he was, is impossible to hit the point of the ear that they say it did. I mean, it's just insane. But I'll play it all the way through.
President's been shot. Oh no. No. Either that or they're covering. We don't know. Either that or they're covering him. We love you. We love you, President Trump! We love you! We love you, President Trump!
That's weird. That's weird. And then it says the flag is lowered to position.
We love you!
And it is. I mean, whether that's by accident or not, or by, I'll show you a claim next, at the peak moment for the opportune shot, right after the photographers are brought up, and right after that guy runs back up there. Oh, wait, let me make sure that's the right guy. No, I don't think it is, actually. Either way, let me see. No, it's not. But either way, the point is right after the guy brings him back, they take the shot, and the flag lowers into position. Now, by the way, that's just sad, to be real, okay? Anybody doing that as a grown, I mean, that is women throwing underwear on stage at an Elvis concert. That's not objective support. That's fans, which is okay. You can be a fan if you want to. Just recognize that that's emotional. That's not about facts. It's about support. It's about team sport politics. He continues to move the photographers into position with help from his colleagues. He does. And by the way, into position for exactly the shot, like the shot that everyone used. I mean, it's hard not to be questioning that. Now, just to what somebody said, which is worth considering, the narrative, as I did look quickly, and I remember hearing this, I think, that they said the flag was moving down because someone shot the crane's hydraulics and the fluid spurted out, lowering the flag. Now, there is zero evidence to back that up. I mean, I've looked into the old reports. I looked at our past coverage. I asked the AI bots to see what, the point is, the reality is that ultimately there's a claim that circulated that somebody near it heard one of the cranes, a bullet clink around, I guess was the report, and then it lowered. And so the assumption became that it hit it, probably hydraulic fluid. I heard that floating around in the beginning. There's nothing, as far as I can tell, to prove that. There's not even evidence to back that up other than the flag lowered, and that's what makes it make sense. Possible, right? But when you look at everything else that happened, it becomes near impossible to not think that there's something off here. So think about that in a larger context. Think about what this did for the movement and where we are and what's happening. If there were in a position where you needed some massive, like an upheaval, a shift in the way we live our lives so jarring that people wouldn't accept it, how else do you get things to happen like that? It's worth considering. Again, understand that this is just a consideration point. Now, the evidence, though, let me make a clear point on this, actually. I would never state something like this without evidence that strongly suggested that direction. That's very important. And I'm theorizing about certain points is important in this field. The difference of when I make fun of or call out people in the mainstream alternative media is when something happens and it's like, okay, with Trump and the Epstein files, where it became, it's probably that he's blackmailing the deep state. Okay, certainly possible, right? Is there a data point to back that up? Is there a shred of evidence that even indicates that might be happening? No. I'm talking about that immediately if that was the case. So that is my problem there. Theorizing and considering possibilities, we all do it. As long as we're clear, and I would argue it's responsible to do it when you're saying, and here's just my opinion. The problem in the mainstream field is they use that and act like just blindly reaching, as I call it, assuming into the wind about what helps their narrative is dishonest. At the very least, it's self-serving and it's not journalism. So that's the difference there. So in this point, or rather the point we just discussed from the video, it's about the fact that 1,000 data points we went over, hyperbolic, a lot of them, very clearly suggest that there's something amiss here. The ear, the location, the way they responded. So this just adds one more data point of evidence to that suggestion point. So it is worth considering. And I hope you guys notice the difference in that. Now let's go into how all of this, by the way, has led into a lot of different things, including if not one of the most unconstitutional efforts I've ever seen in this country that I have personally witnessed and been around to see in regard to what they're doing with immigration, what they're doing with Americans, what they're doing with visa holders, green card holders, or illegal aliens, all of which have constitutional rights despite the dumb people out there, or rather I should say the uneducated people out there around that topic. And the reality being that we're going to get into a little bit. And I think I might have pushed it off. The majority of people that I could see are people that are here, no criminal record, and a large portion of them who are here legally, either because they have a visa or a green card, or in the process of going through asylum, or the process of gaining one of those two things, all of which are the legal realities that are supposed to be what we want from these people, right? How else do you gain that? The idea is you're supposed to try to go, I want to be a citizen, right? So you come and you go through the process. How else is that supposed to happen? Especially if you're a refugee and you want to go through the right process, right? But see, they're taking advantage of those people, claiming they're all villains while letting all the MS-13 leaders go, while going after people that are not part of that gang and letting one out of jail who claims he is. That is what they're doing on a microcosm of the larger problem. This is something I want to reiterate because it is important. And it's amazing to me how clearly this narrative is evolving. It's certainly possible that the whole floating the idea of deporting Americans was a sort of a head fake, because clearly it's taking my attention, but it's the idea that it's even on the table it should scare us all. Now, here's what I'm seeing from Jack Posobiec, PsyOp Jack over here, July 14th. This is clearly not an American, he says. We need to stop accepting this nonsense. Okay. Omar Fateh announces mayoral run in Minneapolis, pledging to raise the minimum wage, freeze rent, and Trump-proof the city. Oh, okay. Now we get where it's going. Okay, if this was a person who wasn't an American citizen, he wouldn't be able to run for office, right? So I did my basic due diligence, and not just from Wikipedia. I posted that because it's just publicly acknowledged. Turns out he was born in Washington, D.C. And that is the reality. I've double-checked this. And of course, obviously, anything could be a lie, but is there evidence to point that he was born somewhere else? Not that I can see. So we have evidence that says he was born in Washington, D.C., and then people out here just going, he's not an American. That's the reality of the story. And I said, you mean aside from being born in Washington, D.C., who are you working for, Jack? I mean, think about this. You're an American citizen born in the United States, not a naturalized citizen. You're born in the United States, Washington, D.C., no less. And because you have brown skin and family from another place, this person wants you to believe you're not American. That is probably the most un-American thing I've ever seen these people say. But that's the whole point, guys. They're not actually fighting for what you think they are. I think they're fighting for Israel, quite frankly, but that's a whole other thing. I mean, not really. It's the focus of a lot of today. But this person says these people, somebody that follows him, that supports him, Jack, says these people may be citizens of America, but they are not Americans. So either Jack already knew he was an American citizen and still said he's clearly not an American simply based on his skin color, which is just disgusting. I mean, that is the definition of racism. Or this person comes right out. Oh, my point was either he knows that and he's just being disgusting, or he doesn't do his due diligence and pretends he's not an American citizen. His own follower goes, well, he may be a citizen, but he's not American. What are you talking about? I'm willing to bet you that this guy is on the mind that he is a naturalized citizen, because that's the thing right now. Well, just because they're U.S. citizens and they moved here doesn't mean they're real Americans. Yeah, it actually does. You disgusting person. The reality, though, is they're trying to make an opening for going after people that are pro something that they argue is not America. Like pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, pro-anything. And some of those you may disagree with. The point is, it's not your opinion. It's not your decision. It's called free speech. It's called ideological freedom. And we used to pretend that's what this country is about. Jack is showing you that's not what they think. You're not allowed to think and say what you want in this country if it goes against a certain country. That's what he's a part of. Now, we talked about this many times already. Americans speaking out about Israel's genocide could be next. In principle, it's no different than that illegal alien being sent to El Salvador, or the Visa card holder, or the green card holder. All of them have constitutional protections. That's the reality of it. I've gone over it 50 times over. It is the case, despite people that don't know any better. The reality is, in principle, it's no different than you. And especially since Donald Trump has floated that American citizens could be next. In fact, here's the Miami Herald as of July 7th saying the Justice Department, driven by Trump policy, plans to go after naturalized citizens, U.S. citizens, simply because they moved here and became citizens, which is what we all tell them they're supposed to do. And if they say something about Israel, well, we're going to take that back, even though legally you're not allowed to. Not like that. It's no different, in my opinion. Well, I went over it in depth. There are few openings in regard to naturalized citizens, and it involves extreme things. They're bending these ideas. The point, though, that I'm making with this, as Jack Posobiec is pointing to an actual American citizen born in this country and saying he's not an American, is that Trump has already floated many times that U.S. citizens could be deported and made it clear that he means ones born in this country. I just felt like the need to play this again very quickly. So here he is saying it. I'll go through only 2 examples, or technically 3. It's been 6 times now he's floated this out.
That you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old.
Just in case you missed it, right there, he said both, right? U.S. citizens. And so he doesn't mean just naturalized. He means all of them. In both times, Trump has made it repeatedly clear that even if you're born here, you're not off the table if he decides you did something against Israel. That's what the reading is, but realize that it doesn't matter what the narrative is. That's not how that's supposed to go. The idea that you can take away a U.S. citizenship or deport somebody based on ideas is, fundamentally counter to what we believe this country is.
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person?
No, just have rights like everybody. But he doesn't seem to know that, or he doesn't care.
They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones, too. And I'm all for it. Because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security.
Which, by the way, has clearly fell on his face, and that's not true. And there's now been an exchange between Venezuela and El Salvador to get people out that they claim couldn't be removed. They're lying to you every single step of the way. I'm convinced, which we'll probably talk about on Monday with Bruce and Jeffrey, about the idea that there's more going on there. That there are people in Venezuela, they exchanged with people from Venezuela. They called them political prisoners. I think that Bukele needed people from Venezuela, like we've seen. The same people he needed from the United States, because they might testify he made a deal with MS-13. That they gave people away to get those people back, which is why he requested them from Trump. This has already come out. The first part of it. Whether he needed that for that reason is my opinion. But the bottom line, this person made a deal with MS-13. The evidence has come out. Trump knew that, and they literally have let the leaders of MS-13 off the hook It's very clear what's going on. And so the question is, well, the point is, what he's saying here is not even the case. Like we can build some kind of off-nation deportation dynamic. I think it comes to the point of trying to remove anybody that they don't like.
And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do.
I'll play that clip from Judge Napolitano again, and just somebody who clearly understands the law and how alarming that statement is. That either because he doesn't know it, which is terrifying because it's textbook, it's simple, it's obvious, or because he's pretending they can maneuver around it. It's terrifying.
That's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad.
Doesn't matter. Okay, they use the extreme examples because they want you to go, oh, a grandma beater, that's okay. No, it does. It's regardless of the crime, the law is the same.
People, really bad people, every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago, when I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's not what happened. But the idea, as somebody mentioned in the chat, the private prison industry, the fact that we even still have a for-profit private prison industry is the sign of this country's decline. Here's the next one.
We use it for violent criminals, our own violent criminals.
I call them homegrown criminals.
Yes.
I mean, the
homegrowns.
The ones that grew up and something went wrong and they hit people over the head with a baseball bat. We have, and push people into subways.
Yeah, that's not rehearsed at all, right?
Just before the train gets there, like you see happening sometimes. We are looking into it and we want to do it. I would love to do that.
Yeah, pretty casual, right? Okay.
And if we don't have Elon, they could be up there a long time. Who else is going to get him? And I just want to thank him. He's going through a lot, what they're doing to him. And these people are going to be caught, and they're going to be caught, and they're going to be prosecuted.
This is around the Tesla thing. Remember that when they were friends like 30 seconds ago? And he was literally going, buy Tesla, and anybody that scratches a Tesla is going to be investigated. And he used that to talk about deporting Americans.
And from what they tell me, I see this just by watching your programs and reading the news, but from what they tell me, they could get 20 years in jail, and they'll get it. I'll tell you, there's going to be no leniency, and there'll be no pardons. I can tell you that right now.
And you said this morning 20 years in jail, and then maybe they get. You said this morning 20 years in jail, and then maybe they'll go to one of these prisons in El Salvador. Do you think, with the way that the judges have been issuing injunctions, it would be easier or harder to send these Tesla domestic terrorists to a jail in El Salvador?
Meaning American citizens born in this country who are protesting Tesla.
Than these MS-13 or Tren de Arrival guys.
Well, I view these people as terrorists, just like others. These are. When I looked at those showrooms burning, and the.
You mean the one? As far as I know, the one. The rest of them were basically scratches and some fire bombs. You know, little they're a big deal, right? Somebody blows a Molotov cocktail in a car. That's a crime. But the way they blew this up into somehow terrorists and, in going after showrooms across the country, typical government nonsense.
Those cars, not one or two, like 7, 8, 10 burning, exploding all over.
In the one location.
The place. These are terrorists. You didn't have that on January 6th, I can tell you. You didn't have anything like that on January 6th.
And so in return, you bombastically cover the other side the same way, right? So you're just as bad, is the point that I always make.
It's sort of amazing because on January 6th,
you get it. He goes on to do his little thing. The point is about sending Americans. Oh, wait, did he say it already? Maybe I missed it.
Democrats were talking. Nobody was killed other than a very beautiful young woman, Ashley Babbitt.
I think he said it already.
Nobody was killed. And you look at what's going on now with these terrorists. These are terrorists, and that's an organized event. Take a look at their signs. Take a look. They're all made by the same sign company.
Same old thing, which is obvious on it happens every time on all sides. The partisan sides, all of them are manipulated. If we can just acknowledge that fact, these things stop having power.
A nice, expensive job. Now, these are the people that finance it are, in my opinion, in just as big a trouble as the people that are setting the match and setting the fires. So we'll see. It's under very serious investigation by the FBI and by the Justice Department. These people are terrorists.
Okay. Now here is the newest one. You saw this. We talked about it already. This was from Alligator Alcatraz. And it was 5608. This is recent. And he makes it very clear.
I mean, you may morph this into, your prison system, frankly, which...
Oh, funny enough, on the prison point, he's literally talking about having DeSantis, who I guess, they 30 seconds ago hate each other. Now they're best friends. This is funny how this all works. They're all against you. That he's talking about turning out that what they're doing with these temporary into making that his current prison system, but building it out into something permanent. But it just shows you how crazy this is getting.
I know you always need, unfortunately. I'd like to say, a little controversial, but I couldn't care less. We have a lot of bad criminals that came into this country, and they came in stupidly. It was an unforced error. It was an incompetent president that allowed it to happen. It was an auto pen maybe that allowed it to happen, and it did happen. But we also have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. People that whack people over the head with a baseball bat from behind when they're not looking and kill them. People that knife you when you're walking down the street. They're not new to our country. They're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country.
There it is.
System where you're going to keep it for a long time. It's
not
that far away from.
I forgot how long this video is. I tried to just barely move back. Sorry about that.
Jails that take years to build and.
Here, it's right there, I think.
And stupidly, it was an unforced error. It was an incompetent president that allowed it to happen. It was an auto pen maybe that allowed it to happen, and it did happen. But we also have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. People that whack people over the head with a baseball bat from behind when they're not looking and kill them. People that knife you when you're walking down the street. They're not new to our country. They're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country. I think we ought to get them the hell out of here too. You want to know the truth. So maybe that'll be the next job that we'll work on together.
Guys, there's no denying that. He just literally stated that if you are born in this country, so a born U.S. American citizen, and you commit a crime that he decides is bad enough, maybe you're the next one to get thrown in a jail in Alcatraz or rather deported is the real point of what this is about. That's what they're talking about, because the point is these places are supposed to be temporary centers before they deport them. I mean, guys, you just can't hide. Again, maybe it's all just hype to get us distracted, but just the opening the door of this conversation is going to hurt us. I'm more than anybody. If you're a Republican, a conservative, somebody out there who cares about call it out. This is unacceptable. It's not some secret trick to play 4D chess move against the Democrat. Even if it is, that's crazy. This is part of the problem, guys. Now, if you don't believe me, again, here's Judge Napolitano telling you how alarming this is. And this was when he said it the third time. It's been 6 times now.
In some respects, it's just as bad now, the authoritarianism that is coming, Gerald. I am really, really fearful for the President of the United States of America to suggest, as he did on Air Force One on Sunday night, that American citizens could be deported. For his press secretary to say, we're looking into a way to see if this is legal. We don't know if it's legal or not. A, it's terrifying. B, betrays such a profound ignorance of first principles to which he is sworn. He is sworn to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and to enforce federal law.
You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens but are criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head, that happened. If rape 7-year-old, and what do you think? There's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too.
Profoundly un-American, utterly unconstitutional, and I'm sorry to say, is coming.
It's a chilling warning from somebody who knows what he's talking about. I don't understand how people who, Judge Napolitano is a popular, entity on the Republican side. And for someone to be that, he's clear what he says is happening. I just find it's either the fact, like I keep talking about, that the majority has long since believed in the narrative and we're just being shown a false, the fake shadow. We're looking at the shadows in the cave, right? We're in regard to the partisan game. That's certainly possible. But or it's just only now beginning to break down. I hope it's the former. I hope that people have long been around it, and it was just hard to see through the controlled structures. But here is a new report from the New Republic. MAGA Republican says he doesn't care if ICE detains U.S. citizens. This is July 16th. He says, Congressman, this is the Congressman, where was it? I just had it highlighted. Where was that? Right here. Troy Nels. All right. It says, on Capitol Hill, Representative Ralph Noman, Texas Representative Troy Nils, and Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville brushed off reports that American citizens are being targeted by ICE in overzealous raids. They are. I mean, there's been 3 examples of American citizens that have been this close to being sent overseas. But it says, Congressman, do you care if U.S. citizens accidentally get detained in ICE raids? Just detained is all they're talking about. It says, no, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about law and order in America. Now he goes on to make the case that it's not on, accidents are going to happen. Yeah, if you allow no process, if you allow them to mask themselves and have no accountability and not identify themselves and not have a warrant, then yeah, that's surely going to happen. That is not the same thing. What they're trying to do is create this lawless dynamic that they can do whatever they want and just claim that just tough it out. We're doing the right thing. Not what's happening. In fact, because what they're actually doing is not even going after the criminals, if you understand the reality. Now, the American Immigration Council put this out on July 1st. Senate approves unprecedented spending for mass deportation, ignoring what's broken in our immigration system. This is the funding for ICE in the appropriations bill that gives it more, I think it's 40-something billion dollars. It's more than most countries' militaries. If you don't see what that shows you by now, I mean, you don't need anything else to understand what that shows you if you know the history of this country. What do you think that's going to do? What do you think will happen with that funding and money? It will become exactly what we worry about. It'll become the enforcement arm in this country. Under a guise of immigration, it becomes a national police force all the time. How long has someone like Jones warned about that? Funny how they're not calling it out now. Here, CBS News, Trump's big, beautiful bill gives ICE unprecedented funds to ramp up mass deportation campaign. So let's talk about that bill. Thomas Massey, foreign aid in the DOD appropriations bill. This is from today. He says $300 million for Syria and Iraq military. So Israel, right? The Iraq military, you could argue there's a deviation there. That's right now even it's kind of complicated. PMU, the Iraq government, the U.S. I mean, Israel's present in Iraq too, by the way. We showed you that a long time ago. The U.S. government was giving them U.S. passports to operate through Iraq. That was a major story that barely got picked up by the mainstream. The point, though, is $300 million for Syria. What happened to stopping the wars? What happened to not continuing the funding? Oh, yeah, we just don't care about that anymore. $300 million for Al-Qaeda in Israel and Israel and Syria. $118 million for overseas disasters? What does that mean? I thought I thought we were done with that. Guess not. $15 million for AIDS in Africa. Wait, what? I thought that was Democrats and woke stuff. Stop lying to yourselves out there. The obvious reality of the two-party illusion is staring you in the face. $500 million for Israel, on top of everything else, on top of $3.8 billion a year they already get, on top of what Trump already gave them. $350 million for Kuwait. Okay. $1.27 billion in foreign security? You know what's that? Think about if everything they told you was true, that money would be aimed inward. Because it's about empire, guys. It's about empire. Not about liberty. It's about empire. $500 million for Taiwan. Guaranteed that's going to cause strife with China. It's the idea. This game it's deliberately creating these situations. $267 million to reimburse countries. He says, this isn't America first. I voted against it because it won't make America great again. It will bankrupt us. Seems like somebody sure wants that. Seems like something is driving this country into collapse. Plenty of people voted against it. Now it says, and I'll go into Marjorie Taylor Greene next. Grand total. God. $3,881,976,000, $4 billion. This is almost half of the amount of the recessions sent overseas in one bill that was supposed to be for our military. It's obvious that you're being lied to. And I mean by everybody other than a few people that called this out. But on that note, remember what we always talk about. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. And Mel framed this as Marjorie Taylor Greene showed more courage yesterday afternoon than any member of Congress has in a very long time. I don't agree with that. I feel like people like Massey have been doing much more, but either way, I'll just read this first. Oh, wait, did I lose that? Oh, there it is. This is really important. I've made this point many times, but as this is happening with whether media or politicians, I doubt the intention here, as she's really calling this out. And I support everything she's saying in this, but I doubt the intention. Just, I'm not saying I know for sure, but I said, but as I'm always saying, support the sentiment regardless. Not the person, or the party, the sentiment. And of course, continue to question them regardless. But if they're calling this out, raise it up. Show the opportunists out there that the truth benefits them more than the lies. Now, the point is, if you think it through, this is obvious. That doesn't mean then the next time you blindly support them. The next thing I say, no, you question that too. You question everything. I know it's hard to wrap your mind around, huh? Continue to question each one. And if they come out and say something that's true, even if you know they're just doing it to get you to support them, still go, that's correct. But I don't trust them. I think they're liars, but that's the right sentiment. And I hope they're honest about it. That is what we have to do, because you're going to get new people, politicians, media, who start to recognize that they will gain more by simply showing you the truth, which kind of inadvertently creates an honest system. People that care because they benefit from the truth. We as people can create that scenario. There will always be people trying to manipulate you for attendance if we are questioning everything and we do our best to raise up the truth. And we could be wrong about that too. The point is, as a collective, as a whole, as a majority, the majority of the time, we can change this. Listen to what she said here, because I think this is important. And I think this is an example of that. My point is, the reason I say I don't trust the intention, because of what she's already said, because of previous actions, because of things that she's done around just since being in office around the partisan game. But it's not outside their own possibility that someone like her could go in for the wrong reasons and decide to change. Same with Jones, anybody else. I hope for that in every circumstance, and so should you, but question it.
Israel bombed a Catholic church in Gaza, and that an entire population is being wiped out as they continue their aggressive war in Gaza. My amendment would strike $500 million in funding for nuclear-armed Israel's missile defense system. The U.S. already provides Israel with $3.8 billion annually in foreign aid. $3.8 billion, that's a lot of money. Additionally, the April 2024 security supplemental included $8.7 billion for Israel. Even though Israel, nuclear-armed Israel, has universal health care for their citizens and subsidized college for their citizens. They're able to provide that. However, here in America, we're $37 trillion in debt. My amendment will ensure an America First Department of Defense, and that is exactly what we need and we haven't had for a very long time.
Wow. I'm happy to see that. I mean, my God, guys, that is a truth bomb on top of truth bomb for people. I mean, everyone in the room knows that, in my opinion. Other than, I shouldn't say it like that. There's plenty that I do think are snowed, but a large portion of them are well aware of what's actually happening. She's just made it very clear. How do we, this is my point, for the long term. Look at how this country has been subsidizing. You're paying for what Israel's doing, including the genocide. And they're benefiting themselves off of that while taking advantage of this country in every possible way. I'm glad people are calling this out. Very important to see. Now, here is another perspective. Here's Randy Fine. Protecting 600,000 Americans who live in Israel and supporting the R&D that will enable the Golden Dome is as an America First as it gets. I was proud to oppose this America Last amendment. So regardless of his narrative, which is flimsy at best, he's literally telling you that it's America Last to make sure the funding goes to America first. Literally, that's the case. America would get that funding first, and he wants you to believe that's America Last. That America First would be funding Israel. This is a person, in my opinion, who's acting for the interest of something other than this country. And on top of that, the 600,000 Americans he's referring to are people that live in Israel, who live in most cases, entirely, if you understand the situation, on stolen land, and many of which are just people that are born in Israel who also have U.S. citizenship, which still makes them an American citizen, guys. That's the fact. But which clearly will publicly state, even in this country, like people like Brian Mast, who are part of the IDF, that they will act in Israel's interest largely over the U.S. That is undeniable. It's not about Jewish people, other than the overlap of Zionism and Jewish people. It's about the political control of this country. Here's what Randy Fine had to say about what Marjorie Taylor Greene was just talking about.
Is in opposition to this America Last Amendment and reject the premise of the arguments that are being made. There are 600,000 Americans who live in Israel, and one rocket has been fired against every 23 of them. 26,000 rockets since October 7th. 43 Americans killed on October 7th, 12 taken hostage. But more importantly, the research that this fund is the premise behind the Golden Dome. When we support research and development for the Iron Dome, we are creating the capability for the United States to defend itself as well. And I have news. We have a nuclear weapon, too. That doesn't get you off the hook with those who are out to get you. When we pass this, when we oppose this amendment, when we vote it down, we are not only standing with Israel, we are standing with the best interests of the United States.
Do you believe that? I let it play through. I'd like to stop it usually, but this is what'll happen if I have to play it through. I have to go back into it again. Just let's listen to this again.
Arguments that are being made. There are 600,000 Americans who live in Israel, and one rocket has been fired against every 23 of them.
Important to think about. That means every rocket that lands in a field that has that hurts nobody, every rocket that Israel pretends was fired, regardless of the evidence. These are real things, guys, and some of them have hit in Israel. But if you're talking about Gaza, very, 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 very few of them. So the reality of what he's doing is trying to make just the simple use of the rocket, which don't forget, we've already proven the reality of how Israel and the operations and the Mossad, I mean, even aspects of people that they have inside of Gaza are a part of these manipulations in some cases. Robert and I have talked about this. That's no way to say that they don't have rockets or they're not firing. They are. It's clear. They're at war and they're committing genocide against them. So it's not hard to wrap your mind around. But if you look at the other side of the conversation, how many people have actually been killed by these rockets in Israel? How many people in reverse have been killed in Gaza? If you want to do the math on what they've done, they've dropped more bombs on Gaza than many wars in the past combined. And yet he wants you to think this is what matters. And also the point that it's coming to, how about the 600 Americans that were killed and that as far as I can tell, don't exist anymore, that were in Gaza before this started? NPR wrote about it. There's 600 Americans that live in Gaza that are trapped. There was even an American that was born in the United States that was speaking up going, I'm trapped in Gaza. Nobody seemed to care. Definitely not Randy Fine, a guy who Trump continues to openly support.
26,000 rockets since October 7th. 43 Americans killed on October 7th, 12 taken hostage. But more importantly, the research...
IDF members, by the way, that matters.
That this fund is the premise behind the Golden Dome.
Yeah, which is a complete manipulation. It is a money laundering operation like I've ever seen. We've talked about this before, and how often it simply doesn't work at all because it's not really, I don't think about that. That's my opinion. I think we're being played. I think it's about money laundering. I think it's about a lot of other things, experimentation. The idea that we're going to build this around this country is, as people have already pointed out, based on their framing it, impossible. The idea of the amount of money, to me, this is another manipulation about dumping money out of this country. But you can decide for yourself.
When we support research and development for the Iron Dome, we are creating the capability for the United States to defend itself as well.
Oh, okay. So as long as we dump billions and billions and billions into a government that's allowing pedophiles to prosper and a government that's allowing committing genocide in multiple countries, and they just continue to build out what are really, I mean, the idea that we giving that money every year is building up our defenses, I would love to see you prove that. I would love to see the outcome. Show us, Randy Fine. What have we gained from the relationship with Israel since its inception? Love to hear it.
And I have news. We have a nuclear weapon, too. That doesn't get you off the hook.
We? Talking about the United States? Maybe not. I mean, that's a weird thing to say. What does that even mean? Anyway, the point here clearly, guys, is this is about him trying to push back against what is obviously for this country first, and he doesn't like it because it puts Israel second. I think that's transparent. Randy Fine, who gets a lot of money from AIPAC. Almost $500,000. Now, of course, Elon Levy comes out, the guy that was fired for being a bad propagandist. America stands with Israel. The bid to slash $500 million from military assistance to Israel, which would have sabotaged American national security, was crushed. Look at this. 422 to 6. 422 voted to keep this funding for Israel, despite what was said. You need to realize what that shows you. These people are putting you last, left and right, and put Israel first. And the idea that he just literally said that not funding Israel will put American national security, will sabotage national security. How often, isn't it weird how often these statements feel like threats? Now, Sal the Agris put this image out. For the first time ever, the U.S. has spent over $1 trillion in a year on war, and it's only July. Now, it's a little bit, I think it's being misunderstood. The point is that the bill, which I think is just the stated numbers, like 896 million. The point is billion. The point is, with everything all said and done, the estimates are looking at like 1.1 trillion. The point, though, is that's not spent in this moment. It's about the year. So this point, though, is still correct that we're only in July, and that's already the case. And I guarantee we're going to spend more on top of the bill. But again, it doesn't mean that it's being spent in that one moment. It's planned throughout the year. The point, though, is there's going to be more wars, more funding, more weapons to Ukraine, which is also still happening. So that is insane. On top of that, the world military spending hit 2.7 trillion in 2024, the entire world. And we're talking about $1 trillion for warfare in this year. It's just insane what's happening right now. World statistics, the 15 highest military budgets in 2025. The United States, now it's 895, they're claiming, and it's as I've, how many times have I said this? That's when they claim, if you look at the real picture, the things they pretend aren't military, but they are, it's well over $1 trillion. I've said that for a long time. 895 billion on the surface, or what they claim. China, what they claim at second is 266 billion. Do you not realize how insane that is? You don't realize how a ton of that just gets handed to Israel? This is, and it's way more than just the 500 million, guys. Just look at the list and recognize that I don't see Iran on that list, not even the top 15. Or Israel, for that matter, because it's subsidized by the United States. The point, though, is that the second closest is 266 billion. The United States, 895 billion. You're being played. And in general, this is from Google. It says, yes, the AI has spent over $1 trillion so far in the fiscal year 2025. I was just kind of searching around. This is just about the idea of just spending in general. And the idea that while we're told we were going to spend less than ever, like Elon and Trump sold you on, while we were sold on the idea that we're going to cut costs and reduce the government, what have we got? Bigger government, bigger technocracy, bigger AI, and more spending than ever. That's what we told you would happen. Not just TLAV or independent media, anybody with a brain, anybody who's watched, anyone who's a student of the U.S. government, a student of government who's watching what they do. Now, new assessment, just to add this on the end of this point, finds that America's strikes destroyed only one of 3 Iranian nuclear sites. But they were obliterated, and he shouted you down for saying otherwise because it's about narrative control. You're being lied to every single day by left and right. If you start to understand the bigger picture, maybe we can change it. Now let's talk about Gaza. This ongoing genocide in your face that is just getting worse every day because people like Trump and Biden are too meek to do anything about it or too controlled. As Sal the Agris points out, this is what an ethnic cleansing looks like. Now, again, if you haven't seen these pictures, guys, this is very important to understand. What Gaza was right before this, and even then understand, despite the narrative, this is still a society, despite there being good and bad places within it, that is all generally suppressed and is inside an open air prison. They are surrounded by guns. I mean, we know this based on the way that October 7th started, right? They're surrounded. They're inside of a controlled, barbed wired, fenced area. And even when they go in the water, they can get shot at. And inside of that, there are people that are struggling in ways you can't even understand before October 7th. But there were even groups inside of this that collaborated with Israel. They got benefits because of it. So this game they play where they show you nice areas and go, oh, look at they lie. The reality is it's been undeniably obvious to the world for a very long time. It's just become a focal point for conversation because of October 7th. Now, that's what it looks like. Look at the tower. I mean, look at that. That is what it looks like to wipe a society off the map. Not because one of those buildings had a tunnel, but because they destroyed all of Palestine. That's what this really was, and still continues to be. Same thing. I mean, just look at that. I believe that's Rafah. I think it's one of these places where it's just the idea that they're sending everyone there to be safe and then do that. In 20 years, he says, everyone will say they were always against this, as they always do. But we know who's out there who is currently supporting it. Haaretz says new satellite data shows devastating scale greater than estimated. That's crazy. And it says 89% of buildings in Rafah, the safe place, 84% of buildings in northern Gaza have been destroyed. When the U.S. nuked Hiroshima, it destroyed 67% of buildings and 40% in Nagasaki. Just make sure you think about this for a second. When the United States sent a nuclear bomb over Hiroshima, after the Japanese had already begun to retreat, which is easily proven today, because they just wanted to see what happened, I guess, or scare Russia. I don't know. It destroyed 67% of buildings. A nuclear weapon. Israel has destroyed 89% of buildings just in Rafah and 84% of buildings in northern Gaza as a whole. It takes a special kind of stupid to not acknowledge what this is, or just disgusting, dishonest, genocidal. This just made me laugh out loud, I have to say. Arsen Otrovsky, the fake international human rights lawyer, says, and just simply post what Anthony Blinken said. I mean, this is spectacularly stupid. Anthony Blinken was caught probably 5 times in a row going, Hamas just has to sign the deal and it'll all be over. And then they do, and Israel goes, never mind. And then he goes, Hamas broke the deal. I mean, it was embarrassing. I mean, it was exactly like that, sometimes in the same day. And so my point is, Blinken is well aware that every single time, and even beyond him, we've seen this, where they go, the big one with Trump, where they were on phase 2, was supposed to start, and all of the hostages would be released, all of them. What did they do? Israel broke it down and started bombing and blamed them. And then went on to say, we want the hostages back, even though that's what they would have gotten if all they had to do was continue the phase. That's the reality. So my point is, they know that the thing holding up the release of hostages is Israel. Here's what he just said. I wish that this is Blinken, I wish that those who understandably have been moved and motivated by everything that's happened since October 7th, he's not talking about the genocide, mind you, if they'd spent just maybe 10% of their time calling on Hamas, demanding Hamas put down its arms, because that would have stopped the genocide, right? Because what have they been saying? That once we get the hostages back, everything's over? No. They said Hamas has to be destroyed. So if they put their weapons down, that would have been an immediate genocide for the rest of the area. They've made that clear. But he goes, give up the hostages, stop what it's doing. Maybe if the world had done that, we'd be in a different place. So his lie is to claim that had we just said, give up the hostages, you mean like they kept offering to do? Put your arms down, like they kept offering to do? It's just sad how clear this is. But the important thing to take away is that people like Blinken, what is that, Murray sitting next to him, people like Trump and Biden and the U.S. government, they know what they're doing, they know they're lying to you, and they are simply just propelling the narrative, even though you know they're lying, even though they know you know they're lying. What does that show you? I don't need to map it out. They're working for somebody else. Or they're blackmailed, or they're controlled. I mean, it's just shockingly clear that even when you know that, you're still pushing it through. Here is an example of the supremacy that is guiding some of the Zionism that's spreading across the world like a plague right now. And this is important to understand. This woman has been, what is her name? Daniela Weiss, I believe. She, I think that's what it is. She's the leader of this illegal settler movement. And has been like rabidly open about it for a very long time, even calling on Trump and Biden to, and they have plans to create new settlements in Lebanon, which they're already starting to try to do. The same thing in Syria, the same thing in Gaza. They're open about it. Meanwhile, our own government lies, or Piers will even shout it down, even though he'll listen to her tell you right now. Here's Piers Morgan again, giving her time to talk about it and not really pushing back on the extreme nature of what she's saying. Zachary Foster says, ever wonder how the Nazis convinced themselves genocide was the solution? Just watch this interview with a living Nazi, and it will all make sense.
About the fact that over 20,000 Palestinian children have now been killed since October the 7th in Gaza.
It's a lot more than that.
I think that the Palestinians, as you said, you see, I said Palestinians, the Gazans and all Arabs around.
She wants to be praised for simply using the right term.
Should stop attacking.
7th in Gaza.
I think that the Palestinians, as you said, you see, I said Palestinians, the Gazans and all Arabs around should stop attacking Israel.
Right, I
If
just
they
asked you
stop
how you thought about
attacking,
20,000 children being killed by the IDF. So how do you feel about that?
I think that the parents should be very careful before they teach the children to hate Jews and to kill Jews.
No, there wasn't.
Okay. So you're okay killing children if you believe they've been taught bad things. That's a monster sitting right there. A monster. You realize she didn't even make that. She made that undeniably clear. I mean, look, even if she's wrong, by the way, and which is at least in many, many, many cases, I'm sure there's some example of what you say. The point is to argue, to assume that everyone out there, every child has been taught to kill Jews, which is not even what Palestinians think. It's insane how wrong this is, how wrong-headed all of this is. But that even if that was the truth, that you're simply going that that's okay, that we should just kill the children because they taught them bad things. This is supremacy. This is like the worst of the worst. This is the same thing. Like imagine the same logic in reverse. If anyone's, well, or applied to anyone else. They're currently ethnically cleansing in Syria. The logic applies there. These people are disgusting.
That wasn't my question.
That
wasn't my question. Sorry to be persistent, but my question.
That was your question.
My question was, how do you feel?
Answer.
My question was, how do you feel? How do you personally feel about over 20,000 Palestinian children now being killed since October the 7th in Gaza? How do you feel about that?
I think that Arabs, Gazans or Jordanians or Syrians, whoever, should be very, very careful with the way they educate the children.
All of them. Every Arab everywhere in the world. Thank you, Laura Loomer. That's where it comes from. Not her in particular, but this ideology. And again, that because they teach them things, it's okay to kill them, is what that just meant twice in a row.
Wasn't my question. That wasn't my question.
Many of them.
Can you answer my question?
Answer. That was my answer.
So you don't care? You have no thoughts about these children at all?
You choose your questions, and I answer them the way I believe is right.
But just to be clear, you have nothing to say about 20,000 children being killed. Nothing at all.
I have a lot to say about everything that happened as a result of the massacre of the 7th of October.
I understand you care about Israeli
Arabs
children who died, as do I. But I'm able to care about both sides of children who've died. Why don't you care, seemingly, about the Palestinian children who've died? Why can't you express any sympathy or sorrow or empathy with the children who've died in Gaza? Are you able to do that?
I warn all Arabs from all sides, from all borders, warn them, stop educating children to hate Jews.
Or this is what will happen. That's what she's doing. And again, you must understand by now, with the amount of evidence that's been laid out from people that care about this, to understand that this is not even the leading sentiment of Palestinians anywhere in the world, despite the propaganda.
Clear. I've now offered you three times.
I made myself very clear.
Oh, you've made yourself very clear.
You asked me 5 times.
I'm going to give you one last.
You asked me 7 times.
Okay, I'm going to give you one last chance to offer some empathy or sympathy or sorrow about the deaths of 20,000 children in Gaza. Are you capable of doing that?
I can tell you that had you cared, and I don't believe you that you care a tiny bit about one killed person if you do not use the means that you have as a media person to stop educating children.
I gave you 4 chances.
Jews. Okay, you gave me 7. You gave me 7.
And you know what? You couldn't give a damn, could you?
That you are to blame more than me.
You don't care. And all you want is all the Palestinians gone. You can barely even bring yourself to say their name. All you want is to take over the West Bank and Gaza. You don't care how many die in the process. You want them all gone. You don't care, do you? That's the bottom line.
As you said, the audience will judge.
Yeah, they will.
Wow. Now, you know my thoughts about Piers Morgan, but just like we talked about earlier, I'm showing it for a reason. That's my point. Raise it up. It has an impact. He's asking it. He appears to care about that, but I just don't understand how someone like this can just suddenly see it. Even after, it was 6 months into the genocide, he was still defending what they're doing. It's opportunism. I know it in my gut, but it's my opinion. Either way, it still doesn't change the fact. This is exactly the point I'm making. Piers Morgan has clearly recognized that he gains more from being honest about this than he does about towing the Israeli line, despite the fact that I guarantee you he gets torn apart, he gets attacked, he probably gets threatening information because he's taking these lines. Unless there's some kind of a, internal, what's the term for it? Like a counterintelligence dynamic happening here. Always question everything. Consider the facts, or rather all the evidence, and make sure facts guide your decision. The point is this is obvious. These people, and the fact that even Piers Morgan is pointing to this person and like giving her the rope to hang herself with, just you are clearly a terribly disgusting person who does not have any empathy for anybody who you've just othered. That again, I'll read exactly what Zachary Foster said. Ever wonder how the Nazis convinced themselves genocide was the solution? Now, I don't mean like what I would argue his point means is not the leadership, not the government that doesn't care, that is obviously, historically doing things like this, but the people who adopted these ideas. Watch this interview with a living Nazi, and it will all make sense. Here is another video that's coming out of another person who was freed from Israeli detention centers. Freed Palestinian prisoner, who's a journalist, by the way, Sam Al-Sai, describes how he was raped by Israeli soldiers with objects as a welcome to the Israel's notorious Megiddo prison. Different than, said Tiaman and the other prisons where people have been raped and they've all proudly discussed, or that on their media channels they debate why it should happen. You understand that people will go, that's not true, he's making it up. Okay, possibly. But are we debating that this is happening? Because they've publicly debated whether it should continue on Israeli mainstream media. It's a failing effort right now to try to bury all this because it's not going away. Now, I'll just include this again because we're talking about what they're doing. Make sure you didn't miss this story. Major story from the Israeli mainstream media that few will hear. The title was "Survivors Testify: Israeli Politicians Participated in Sadistic Sexual Rituals Involving Minors." It was in front of the Knesset, their Congress, and members of the Knesset stood up and called it a watershed moment. Many people filed through and testified about doctors and politicians and people at the highest level of Israeli society who took part in what they called sadistic sexual rituals that included minors. They were children and women that were at the time when it happened who said they were passed around by people in power. Sort of sounds familiar when you look back to see what was happening in the Epstein conversation, right? Dennis Hassert. The things they use to control this government. This is what we're talking about, guys. There is something dark that's coming out, and there's a reason that Trump and the rest are trying to avoid what's going on with the Epstein files. That's what I think. Now, the last segment that I think is really important to all this. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, one more thing about Gaza, and then we're going to talk about Syria to wrap up today. But the starvation is its own horrifying element of what's going on in Gaza. Just bombing people to death, the genocide is just sadistically horrible. This goes so far beyond just committing genocide. This is, again, sadistic. It's wanting these people to suffer before you kill them. That's what we're talking about. Forensic architecture. The mounting starvation in Gaza is a direct result of Israel's dismantling of the UN model of aid distribution and its replacement with the lethal GHF system. See, they claimed UN was Hamas, and which I don't think anybody even believed. It was just a flimsy narrative that didn't really line up with any facts. The point is that model, regardless of how clearly the UN has its own problems, was in fact getting aid to these people. They removed that model and have now turned it into what they call a Squid Games, Hunger Games dynamic, where they're just executing people who try to get food. Israel is deliberately undermining systems of aid distribution by the UN and other international agencies, restricting the flow of aid, permitting looting in military zones, and attacking distribution centers. just as civilians have been killed at the supposedly called, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is just funded by Mossad, as Max Blumenthal broke down. They've been killed at these rationing stations. Those waiting along aid truck routes are also being targeted by the Israeli media, making every route deadly. See, we see them getting executed at the stations. What we don't see is the people that are walking there getting picked off as they walk there that don't make the news. Here's an example of that. I wanted you to see this because this is every day, 50 times a day. The evidence is all over the internet. Here's another example of the Israeli military hanging back and just firing into what you're seeing here. The area that are right over where they're firing is where all people are standing waiting for food. This is what Israel's doing every day. Sitting there in the pumping, randomly opening fire on people that are waiting for food. Happens all day. I don't mean literal, I think the non-stop reality. They laugh about it, like that video we showed you before, where a sniper kills a child on the fence, and they all cheer and go, "Oh, you got the video?" It is sadistic what's happening. They want these people to suffer. So that's what they're highlighting here. That they're shooting them as they go, as they stand there, as they leave. Here is an article that Caitlin Johnstone shared. Unprecedented malnutrition surges in Gaza. What you'll find is that somebody we referenced quite a bit, Nick Maynard, professor, doctor, had a disgusting an admission of what's going on that I didn't know before. Now, the article is quoting Nick Maynard, who I'll play for you first what I've showed you before, who's been there for a long time. I think he's come and gone, but the point is that he is operating to help people as a doctor from outside of Gaza. And as everyone in this thread, I actually just embedded these first four, but this long thread of doctors, every single one of them will tell you exactly the same thing. Some of them breaking down, crying, trying not to describe to you as they watch children shot in the head, as they watch IDF execute doctors in front of them. That's how actually obvious this is, and this is exactly why Twitter puts a warning and suppresses the content. Despite that, it still gets lots of reach. That's where we really are. That's all of TLAV for you right there. That's a microcosm. But here's what Nick Maynard said before this. And this, guys, this was, I think, in the first so many months.
Every single part of the hospital has been destroyed. The whole infrastructure of the hospital has been destroyed. When I spoke to Marwan yesterday, he told me there were 107 patients still in the hospital, 60 medical staff. God only knows what has happened to them. I think we've seen some of the pictures. Surgeons I know have been executed in the last 48 hours there. Bodies have been discovered in the last 12 to 24 hours who have been handcuffed with their arms behind their back. And so there is no doubt at all that multiple healthcare workers have been executed there in the last few days.
You believe executed by whom, Doctor?
By the Israeli Defense Force.
Why would they seek to execute surgeons and medical professionals?
Well, they've been doing it since October the 7th. Over 450 healthcare workers have been killed. Friends of mine that I have worked with over the years, many have been abducted as well, and nothing has been heard of them since. So there is no doubt in my mind, and I can bear witness from this from my time at Al-Aqsa Hospital and from talking to people, that there's been direct targeting of the healthcare system in Gaza, direct targeting of hospitals, and multiple killings of healthcare workers.
Any death is tragic, but this is not, and I say again, anyone dying in any sense. So this is not, and please don't be upset by this expression, collateral damage. This is specifically targeted, you're saying, medical professionals by the IDF to be taken off and executed, is your belief?
Most certainly, that is my belief.
Have you at any time seen anything that would lead you to believe that there had been terrorists who were hiding in the hospital?
Without exception, every single one has responded to say they have never witnessed any Hamas militant in the hospitals they have worked in.
Right. That's one of an endless stream of doctors telling you exactly what they're seeing. And yet we're still lied to by the clearly Zionist-controlled governments of the world. By the way, this was just something I just was searching real quickly to see if there's anything popping up. This Zionist propagandist. 6 days ago, Israel agreed to a Qatar-backed ceasefire. Hamas rejected it. See, it just never stops. Hamas is solely to blame for this war continuing. Why is nobody talking about this? Because the New York Post just blindly repeated what Israel said. It's insane. We just talked about this. The reality of what happened, this is the article he's pointing to from July 12th. He's just trying to jam this into the conversation today. The reality is it's the same conversation every single time. There is an ongoing discussion, and there's very clear basic things that have been set from the very beginning that Hamas has been release of all hostages, an end of hostilities. It's basically all they're calling for. The reality is Israel knows that and just continues to pretend like there's some discussion. And in this last case, what happened was Israel and the United States agreed on what they were going to say. Then they thrown it out to the world and said, we have an agreement. Let's see if Hamas takes it, knowing that they didn't even show it to them yet. And then when Hamas looks at it and goes, well, obviously it's a non-starter. You're not even on this right page. They go, I rejected it again. The last time they had an agreement that was close, Hamas was even willing to take themselves out of the situation. They said, we'll remove ourselves from the thing, which is what Israel claims they wanted. And twice the U.S. and Israel reinserted that language to keep them in Gaza. It's becoming pretty obvious that they need this to finish out what they want. They need the excuse of Hamas to keep this going. And so all he can do is just lie to your face and make the lie. And what New York Post did was just parrot what Israel and the Zionists were saying, which is that Hamas did it, just like Blinken said, just like Trump has said, and they've been lying to you every single time. Now here's the article. It says Professor Nick Maynard, an Oxford-based gastrointestinal surgeon, currently in Gaza. That's as of right now. Imagine doing this still with what he's seen. The courage is worthy of praise. Added that snipers were deliberately targeting certain parts of different body parts on different days, such as the head, legs, or genitals, near U.S. Israeli-run aid distribution points. So on day 1, they shoot the head. Day 2, they shoot the legs. This is a game to them. Professor Maynard said, quote, unprecedented levels of severe malnutrition were directly contributing to preventable deaths among patients receiving surgery. He said, the malnutrition I'm seeing here is indescribably bad. It's much, much worse than a year ago. And a year ago, they were already food insecure. 6 months ago, the IPF said it was is the ICP? Was it let me look real quick. I still have the article. I think it'll pop up. There it is. IPC. This was a while ago. Is it not loading? There we go. 1.1 million people. Famine. Imminent. This was I forget what the date is on here, but this was like 6 months ago. So the point is, it has been there this entire time. And his point is now it's worse than we've ever seen, which is wild. That's where we're using the images to show you, as much as it's hard to wrap your mind. It's hard to see. He added that colleagues he worked with a year ago, so doctors who are there, were unrecognizable or barely recognizable, having lost 20 to 30 kilograms due to food shortages. The doctors. Critically, he said injured patients were dying because malnutrition was preventing them from healing. So some of them that actually get good treatment, if that's even possible where they are with what they don't have, are just simply dying anyway because they don't have their bodies are eating themselves alive. It says the repairs that we carry out fall to pieces. Patients get in terrible infections. They die. I've never had so many patients die because they can't get enough food to recover. He said, I saw a 7-month-old baby who looked like a newborn. The expression skin and bones doesn't do it justice. He said, Professor Maynard added that snipers appear to be targeting body parts, including genitals and legs, near the controversial the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Quote, the medical teams here have also been seeing a clear pattern of people being shot in certain body parts on different days, such as the head, legs, or genitals, which seem to indicate deliberate targeting. He goes on. There's plenty more for you to read. Unbelievable. Now, this is a really chilling image. What you're seeing here, a scene from an ongoing Israeli genocide in Gaza, With food supplies completely cut off, desperate civilians are forced to scrape up flour mixed with sand just to keep their families alive. Not fiction. This is a horrifying reality. Now ask yourself why that's the circumstance. Why are these bags strewn about, broken open? Because this is how they're doing this, guys. These people are being shot at while they do this. They're not being given. I mean, I can't even understand how this can exist in this world. It's over the top. You are treating these people like they're in the, I mean, this is a Hunger Games dynamic. These people are shooting at them as they try to survive. You're doing it in a way that it's, you're torturing them with a scrap of food as their children are starving to death. Zachary Foster, Israel is starving to death 500,000 Palestinians in Gaza right now. Here's what the UN was saying.
Is worse than I've ever seen it before. Starvation is spreading. 500,000 people in starvation. 90,000 children now in urgent need of treatment for malnutrition. And I met many of those families who told me that there are days that their children are not eating at all. And I had mothers telling me how they're trying to have kids not play so that they don't draw more energy than they are able to provide them with through food. The fact that people are now dying every day trying to get food, I think it's the starkest illustration of how desperate the situation is. The amount that we are able to bring in, it's just a fraction of what's needed. For a period after that blockade was lifted, we were able to do 20, 30 trucks per day. That's far from enough, and it has driven up the prices of any basic commodity. The price of a kilo of wheat flour was over $25.
Don't forget that this is because of the ISIS-linked gangs that Israel is working with to do that, as Robert broke down beautifully on an interview I'll show you when this is done.
Operating environment also for our teams is just impossible. Our teams get stuck waiting for clearances and at checkpoints, often spending between 15 to 20 hours straight. There's not enough fuel, there is not enough spare parts to our vehicles, and we don't have basic communication. Today, though, we were allowed to deliver through Sikkim for the first time in several days, but we want to be able to deliver in the north because we think that is the way to also help bring down the levels of desperation and prices. Regardless of this progress that we have seen, it's not going to be enough to turn the tide of hunger, that's for sure. So what we really need is the ceasefire. We have enough food on the borders to deliver to the entire population for some 2 months, but obviously we need that ceasefire to take advantage and deliver to the entire population.
Here's the interview I did with Robert about this. And we've talked about it before this. It's very clear what's going on. We've talked about these gangs in a few different conversations they were the ones that were stealing and selling the food at higher prices. The point is that they've now worked with them, and it came out very clearly that they have clear links to ISIS. That was brought up in Israel. That's just, and it shouldn't be surprising, especially with the next conversation, seeing as how they have quite literally taken the Al-Qaeda offshoot Hayat Tahrir al-Sham off the terrorist watch list. Al-Qaeda. No one's denying that they're part of Al-Qaeda. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is best. It's a group that's just been changed names a few times, as Vanessa and I've talked about. And it's obvious that Israel and the United States have always worked with. In fact, it's a proxy element of both of them, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. This is not a secret if you've been paying attention. Now, last few points on Gaza. Aid for Gaza's starving children is right at the gates. Let it in. This is from July 15th. They're letting these people suffer. UN aid trucks are waiting, and they're still playing games by giving people scraps and shooting at them. Here are children that are literally starving to death in front of your eyes. As you just heard, every day there are children dying. Not by bombs, but specifically from Gaza, from starvation. Here is a sad, sad, sad reality. Aaron says, when was the last time we have seen such a concerted campaign to starve an entire civilian population? A Palestinian child cries out in hunger as famine worsens in Gaza, with Israel continuing to block aid and weaponizing starvation in the Gaza Strip. Makes me sick. Now, just in case you needed to see it even clearer, this is the title of the article from a genocide scholar, or rather what he said. I'm a genocide scholar. I know it when I see it. This is, I guess that I thought that was something different. That is the title. A genocide scholar has just broken down that what's going on in Gaza is a textbook example of genocide. Not news to 99% of the world, but for those holdouts that still wanted to lie to yourselves for political reasons, guys, it's obvious what's happening. It is the most obvious genocide I think the world has ever seen. And now you have even more evidence to back that up. Now, in antiwar.com, you might have already seen this. Israeli tanks strike the only Catholic church in Gaza that still exists. There's more. The point is they tried to lie about that at the beginning. Remember the woman from Israel's political background, what's her name? The politician tried to lie to LBC saying there's no churches. And he goes, yeah, there's one right here. He goes, oh, well, they don't go there anymore. Yeah, here's the pastor. Well, never mind. Like they lie they lie like they breathe in the Israeli political field or just politics anywhere. But they targeted this church yet again. And this was one of the priests there was somebody who called the Pope near daily, as the reports have said, and they attacked it. And then because it got so much negative attention, they spoke up and said, oh, well, it was a mistake. Didn't stop them from doing it, and they don't care. They just only give you some hollow response when enough people seem to scream about it in positions of power. Killing 3, injuring a priest every single day. I hope the conservative right can say something about that. Now, on top of that, don't forget, I'll just include this. Decentered News put this out. This is from a while ago, but it's the conversation of Israel's use of AI targeted creation platform, Hasbara. We were talking about this December 24th, 2023. How Israel uses AI to select bombing targets in Gaza. We were talking about this before it was discussed in the larger conversation. The point is, this is Whitney and I discussing this and where this goes. Here's the link to it, to the interview link on TLAV. The Cyber Threat Intelligence League and its impending false flag with Whitney Webb. Include that too. The point is just to recognize that they're using artificial intelligence in the genocide, and that ties back to the original point and where this is all really going. There's many objectives here. Some of them are just genocide, just for the sake of removing the people that they don't like. But on top of that, there's always a bigger point, and it's about where the world is going. And hopefully we can start to see that. Now, to finish this in the point of the larger picture, but as it pertains to Syria, but to recognize, guys, that this is a greater Israel dynamic with Lebanon and Syria and Gaza and Egypt and a lot of, here, let's look at it yourselves. And let's just go with this first to make sure you remember this is not a fringe secret. This TRT World put this out. This is patches they were wearing after October 7th and have been before. They are greater Israel patches. That's what that is. That's what the Israelis government structure believes is going to happen. So that means that they openly believe, and that means that the U.S., they know this in the world, that they want 3/4 of Syria, the vast majority of Iraq, a major part of Saudi Arabia, all of Jordan, right? A huge part of Egypt. It's very clear to me, half of Kuwait. It's very obvious that this is where they're going. And the governments of the world that are clearly controlled by them are carrying this out for them at your expense. Ask Syria, which is what this point is about. Here, this was just put out 14 hours ago from Mencho Sint. It says, occupation soldiers patrol in the villages of southern Syria today. Guess what? With a Talmudic cube on their head. In case you don't know what that is, I'm sure you've seen it. Something that Rabbi Shmuley and that ridiculous moron Mike Rappaport love to throw in your face on Twitter because they want to really project how great, they're trying to, first for propaganda. Not to say that there aren't people that are, believe in practice the religion. It is a part of their religion. My point is there are people that love to throw it on Twitter for their own purposes, which is sort of in my way. I guess I'll put it this way. From a Christian's perspective, there was somebody out there, which they exist, especially in politics and media, that are out there throwing their religious practices in your face as if that makes them seem, that's propaganda. That's for that. That's your personal life. You don't need to throw that in people's faces. My point is, this, just in case you didn't know that, is something that does happen. It's very common. And this is a member of Al-Qaeda. The ruling faction of Hayat al-Sham that is overlapping with Israel and the United States in Syria, who's roaming around in the back of what looks like a U.S. Jeep with his gun with a Talmudic cube on his head. Now, look, is it possible that this Muslim terrorist believes in the Jewish religion? Certainly possible. But my point is, it's obviously more than that. As I see it, that this is about the example that this is Zionism taking over Syria. To make it very simple, a lot of moving parts, but the overarching point in time, we don't need that to prove it, as we'll show you right now, that Israel is openly attacking Syria, openly occupying Syria, and openly ethnically cleansing Syria. And the very people that were telling you we're saving Syria from the Muslim terrorists are now looking the other way, as the people that work for them are in fact doing that. And let's not forget the lie about the Muslim terrorist dynamic, which not to say that they don't exist in every culture, but that the idea, the very reality of what we see as Muslim terrorism in this world was started by Zionism. And that is a very important thing to understand, where it really comes from and what that means. For example, with things like the terror, the suicide bomber. That's Israel, guys. That's Zionism. That has, yes, bled into plenty of things. Anyone can do it, but the origin point, as this academic will tell you, comes from Zionism.
The Zionists have used it and brought it, in fact, to the area. Terrorism, as we know it today, the planting of bombs in marketplaces and so on and so forth, was, in fact, introduced into the Middle East by the Zionists in the 1920s. But the net result of Zionist terrorism and violence in the first third of the 20th century has brought forth, to my mind, the anomaly, the horrific and unacceptable status in the Middle East today of the State of Israel, which is in fact an armed garrison state, which now exports more arms and distributes violence all around the world, vastly disproportionate to its size. I mean, in that respect, I think it's a horrible cycle of violence. But in it all, I think the Palestinian is the victim. There's no question about that.
So the point is, before we get in Syria entirely, is that this is what's rolling out around it. And if you want to highlight a country out there that is determined to topple, to take over things around, like the argument, if you don't stop them in Gaza, that you're next. Right? They want to tell you, right? If you don't stop Hamas, you're next. They're going to come to your border. Well, that seems like a bit of projection, doesn't it? Seeing as how Hamas, aside from the reality of being funded by Israel, parts of it at the very least, up until October 7th, or any other part we're talking about, I don't see them carrying out regime change. I don't see them occupying foreign countries. Or Iran, or Russia, or China. Not to say that there's not elements of their infiltration or whatever else, but on the surface, you can see the United States and Israel actively toppling and occupying and regime changing and false flagging countries all over the world. This is their stated objective. Now you have to ask yourself, why did we have a coup in Egypt? Why was there a coup? Saudi Arabia is just a vassal state from the very beginning, but we saw coups in Iraq. We saw coups in Syria. We saw coups. Well, now you know why, at least in large part. And Iran was always on that conversation. Now, you can argue it's about something else, but you can see that it does overlap in a tiny part with Iran. The point, though, is about, I think, the larger picture of what they think is their adversarial direction with Iran for a lot of different reasons. Actually, I want to hold on to that for later. So here, oh yeah, and this one too is important to include. Here's our show from December 10th. Right when this first started, as Israel further occupies Syria, which is still disputed, I guess, which is insane to me. They have bases in Syria now. Western-backed ISIS patch-wearing terrorists began executions on video, publicly. This, again, is an image directly from Syria right after they took over. That is an ISIS patch. There's another one you saw with the video of him executing Syrians. None of this was happening under Assad, despite the narratives, not in the way that it's happening now. And Syrian girl on 16th, 2 days ago, says Israel is bombing the suburb she grew up in. This is what happens when you don't fight Israel. Here is BBC 2 days ago. U.S. says specific steps agreed to end Syria violence after Israeli strikes hit Damascus. Think about how dumb this is, to literally occupy and overtake a country, let your terrorists just start ethnically cleansing people, then bomb areas for whatever reason, and act like then you create a ceasefire. You're fighting yourself. Basically, you are murdering innocent people and then stepping in to act like the peacemaker. I don't think anyone buys this outside of the BBC and other media and blind politicians. But my God, is it just obscene the way they're always trying to frame themselves as somehow the peacemaker is just like the U.S. government. Now, here's Netanyahu on the 17th, yesterday, announcing how he is going to, quote, occupy southern Syria. That's in Hebrew. You can watch for yourself. There's subtitles. Netanyahu announces occupation from the Golan Heights to the Druze mountain area. Now, this is why you're starting to hear the idea that we're going to protect the Druze. because they're expanding their borders and they need an excuse. I mean, I'm actually surprised they even think they do anymore. No one buys it, but they still need to lie. Welcome to Greater Israel, Solomon points out. This is what's happening. So let's get into the Druze point, which is important as well. Here is the cradle. This is from July 15th. This is the spiritual leader of the Druze community in Israel. He says, we quote, "We are in contact with members of the Druze community in Syria. They are weeping. Syrian regime forces are storming their homes, killing them, beheading them, and humiliating them." Now realize that's Israeli Syrian. That is the people that is Hayat al-Sham. So I don't even feel like that represents Syria. That is the people that they put there, and they are then going after the Druze community. The very community that Israel pretends they are supported by. They're not. But this is the Druze community in Syria telling you that their people are storming their homes, killing them, beheading them, humiliating. It's ethnic cleansing, just like we told you Israel and the U.S. always seem to carry out. Now here, Hadi points out horrific videos, this is from the 15th, of Syrian regime jihadists executing Druze civilians are surfacing all over the internet. Same gut-wrenching scenes at the coastal massacres months ago that left 100+ Alawites dead, which we covered. Dr. Fatan was shot near her hospital. Fajir, Saeed, and Laith were executed in front of their mother. It goes on, guys, and on and on and on. That's what they're doing. Now, what's crazy is that Israel's now acting like we need to save these people. Oh, I guess I didn't grab it. The point is that they're now acting like we need to step up and, that's what it was. Actually, I'm sorry. I closed it before making that point. The image, the video that Netanyahu put out, that was the last major point on it, is that ultimately he needs to protect the Druze, right? That's what he's claiming this is about. We need to occupy this because, I think I did kind of say that, because we need to protect the Druze community. Even though right when he's doing that, the people that he works with are murdering them, raiding their homes, and raping and pillaging and torturing, like we continue to see, as the Druze leader says. Now, let's not forget, on August 6th, I think that right before that, a couple days before, I think it was the day before, as Robert titled the article, "An Israeli false flag to justify attacking Lebanon." Remember, this was the Iron Dome, back to the whole Golden Dome dynamic that they have in the area, that more than once in the past, there's a video right here. This is one from July 27, 2024. What does it show you? It shows the Iron Dome in that same village, launching in the air and then firing back and landing on them. Just to quickly, right there. So the point is, they said was, and you could read more. It's video from March showing the activity of the Iron Dome base hit behind the mountain. At the same time, several Iron Dome rockets failed and fell inside the village and nearby. That's the point. Okay. Which is what I think is kind of always how this works. So the question is, this, if you remember, was the Druze a bunch of kids playing soccer. The a missile hit them all, and they made it about Lebanon. Lebanon bombed the Druze community. No, you could very quickly prove that was their Iron Dome missile. Now, whether that was an accident they decided to use or they just did it to blame Lebanon, it's hard to say. Either way, this is the very community that they claim they want to protect. And at the time, even before this, when Netanyahu tried to walk around, they literally kicked them out of the area because they do not want them there. That's public. Now, here is an article goes further back. Whitney Webb wrote this in 2017. Israel offers to occupy Syrian town to protect Druze population. You see, nothing is new under the sun. They just sell you the same narrative. And what do they want then? To occupy the town. They want to expand their borders. Now they're doing it under Trump because they know they can get away with it. Now, this is from Robert Imlakesh from September 2023. Israel wants conflict in Syria's Sueda to rekindle devastating war. So same conversation about the same areas. They're all of them are simply highlighting that they just want to find a way to accomplish this. Now they're going back to the same old narrative. We have to protect them, even though they're the ones killing them. Now, this is an interesting overlap to this. This is from the 15th. Syrian Girl's post is from the 18th today. Megatron says, the new war in Syria is in full swing. The Israeli-backed Druze, which is not the same as just the Druze population, are seceding from the new Syria under control of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That's the group they support, Hayat al-Sham. As previously predicted, Syria will be divided into several regions, which, by the way, was the original plan. That goes back to the Balkanization of the Middle East. Zbigniew Brzezinski from the 70s and the technotronic state. I mean, this is where they were predicting this, what they wanted to accomplish. The Kurdistan, and the problem is that they made a lot of promises, to the Kurds included, which I don't think are going to come to pass, as always. Either way, the bottom line is they are now creating the conflict, which they will take advantage of. At least that's what it seems like. And so they're using the Druze population to create a civil war. Syrian Girl says the same thing. Gangs of Bedouin minorities are heading to Sweda, we just talked about, to slaughter Druze minorities. We are in the real civil war in Syria now. Now, see, there's different opinions on how it's playing out, but I see the same thing. It says not like in 2011, by the way, which was a war of nations on Syria under a guise of civil war. Israel will come in after they let this play out, kill whoever's left, whoever it is, and build settlements. I agree with that. I think this is, whether this is just a byproduct or not, that they don't care about any of this. They just want these people to, they'll kill and murder and maim whoever they want. They're creating conflict to justify that presence forever. Same thing they do everywhere else. Libya, anywhere else, guys. They are reaping the benefits from anywhere. What do you think's happened to the resources in these places while they create conflict? They're taking them. Just like we saw in Syria, they just started trucking out all of the oil and all the resources. I showed you that at the time, even though they got shouted down as fake until it was later proven, as usual, ahead of the story. The point is that this is being manufactured. But we're going to jump in and save them, right? Kevork Almacian, who's been covering this for a long time, he said this today. What we're witnessing in Syria isn't just the collapse of a state. It's the deliberate dismemberment of a society that once housed multiple ethnicities, sects, and identities under one national roof. Remember, the third largest Christian population of all the Middle East before they wanted to liberate the country. Now, you can clearly see who's running it. The actual Islamic terrorists, or the people that pretend to be that, however you look at it, that they claim they were fighting, which is the same everywhere else you look. It's like we can't learn our lesson. What's heartbreaking, he says, isn't the carnage. That is too, but he goes, but the clarity that came too late for too many, right? People who genuinely thought that this change from Assad was going to be good for the Syrian people because they bought the narrative. For years, we tried to sound the alarm. We tried to educate, to open eyes, to offer a deeper view beyond the binary narrative of regime versus rebels. But many didn't want to listen. Some out of fear, others out of convenience, and many simply because the story didn't fit the oversimplified script of good guys versus bad guys. Those of us who did see it coming, those who warned about the growing presence of jihadist extremists, the Takfiri fanatics imported from Central Asia to Xinjiang to Libya. Remember the whole rat line point from Libya to Syria? They literally created this and used it against Assad. We're not just, he said that, those of us who did see it coming, who warned about the growing presence, were not just ignored, we were mocked, censored, or demonetized. But we were right. Let's be brutally honest here. Coexistence with the so-called reformed al-Qaeda regime was never going to be possible. The idea that Syria could transition into some liberal democratic utopia while foreign-backed jihadists execute Alawite and Druze villagers with impunity is not just naive, it's insulting. And in the vacuum, the vultures descended. Israel postured as savior. The U.S. played geopolitical chess, and regional powers fueled their own fires. Ordinary Syrians caught in a blender of dogma and drones were left asking only for one thing: just let us live. When the bar for dignity becomes mere survival, you know the experiment has failed. To ignore the degenerative role of imported extremists, disguised as freedom fighters, is to rewrite history with blood-soaked hands, which is always, how long have I said that? Which is not a new sentiment, but it's the history is always written by the winning hand, which rarely means it's the full picture or the truth. The people who win, right? So if you cheat, lie, and steal, and you ultimately come out ahead, you get to dictate how history remembers that. Always. It wasn't a simple civil war. It was a controlled demolition of a nation designed to produce either fragmentation or submission to foreign influence. The plan wasn't botched. It was executed to perfection. Balkanization wasn't the risk. It was the goal. Time to just acknowledge this and recognize that it's not just this. It's the whole thing, the whole big picture right now. Now, in case you think this is new, oh, it's because of Assad or it's all October 7th. No, well, and Assad the timing would make sense, but because October 7th or whatever else. This is from the Cradle, 2024, and plenty of others that simply reported what he said. Quote, Jewish state will extend from Jerusalem to Damascus, says the Israeli finance minister in 2024. Yes, post-October 7th. The point is 3 days. The point is this has always been on the table. The moment this kicks off post-October 7th, you're going Syria? Obviously, this is bigger than, it is an excuse to do what they wanted. That's why many still argue that this was allowed or created. Look at where we are. Now, clearly it didn't go to plan, or at least didn't work out, because the people are seeing through their lies. Lastly, Kevork also says 7 months were not enough, apparently, to find Assad's secret chemical stockpiles. He says, we're being mocked. This is from yesterday. The Israeli air attacks on Damascus, this is what the Syrian al-Qaeda terrorists are saying, what they call the government right now. The Israeli airstrikes are hampering the Syria's effort to find and destroy chemical weapons stockpiled during the rule of Bashar al-Assad, according to the new Syrian government. Right. So the fact that your allies are bombing the areas that you all want, that's why we can't find the chemical stockpile that doesn't exist. 7 months they've been looking. It's like you said, we're being mocked. Aaron Mate rightly chimes in and says, checking in on all of those who shunned the OPCW whistleblowers and attacked those of us who reported on the chemical weapons deception they exposed. Aaron chief among them. Where is Assad's supposed chemical weapon stockpile? Did he take it with him on the plane to Moscow? We have always been played. If you fall for government narratives, guys, that's the real picture here, is that it's all in the interest of what's currently happening. And the way I frame that, the way I think is all of it. Technocracy, Zionism, globalism, and it's one blob as far as I can tell. And maybe that's just by design now, or by necessity now, because of how clearly it's all kind of intertwined. Maybe it wasn't always that case, but look at what we just laid out today. Look at the facts. Look for yourself. Look at the source material. It's never been this clear in all the years I've been doing this, which is why I think they're all kind of spiraling right now, flailing, clearly worried. It's just not working. The narratives don't stick anymore. That's my point in the beginning. There is an opportunity right now. And that's why each of us individually need to strive to be better than them, better than this, better than the whole thing. Just be better. Because if we strive to be better, if we strive to be more moral and have integrity, act with, follow your principles, actually hold true to what you believe in, and don't get swayed by partisan narratives, maybe we could take advantage of this moment. I believe that. I wouldn't do this if I didn't believe that. So thank you for continuing to fight for the truth, because you're winning. Thank you for being here. If you believe in this platform, if you find value in what we put forward, we do this for free. We put the information out because we believe in it. And we don't expect anything back. But we couldn't continue to do this without your support. So if you find value in it, show me what it's worth to you. We have plenty of ways down below to support this platform, from Cash App to Buy Me a Coffee to direct donations on our website to any number of different things. Bitcoin donation. If you believe in this platform, if you support the work, help us continue. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.